The venue smelled like lilies and lies. Elena stood in the small room behind the chapel, staring at herself in a mirror that had reflected 1,000 other brides. The dress was simple. She'd insisted on that. White, but not the kind of white that screamed for attention. Fitted at the waist, flowing at the hem. Her mother had cried when she first tried it on, and Elena had pretended that was a good thing. Outside, she could hear the murmur of voices filling the chapel. 200 guests, maybe more. Marcus had wanted a big wedding. Everyone should see this, he'd said, his hand warm on her shoulder, his smile perfect. Everyone should know you're mine. At the time, it had sounded romantic. Now, standing alone with her reflection, Elena felt something twist in her stomach. Not quite nausea, not quite fear. Something older, quieter. The feeling you get when you realize you've been walking toward a cliff in the dark, and your next step is going to be empty air. She pressed her palm against her abdomen, smoothing invisible wrinkles. "Stop it," she whispered to herself. "You're being ridiculous." The door opened without a knock. Her maid of honor, Jenna, who'd known her since high school, poked her head in. Jenna's smile was wide, practiced, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "You ready? They're waiting." Elena turned, managed something that probably looked like a smile. "Yeah, let's do this." Jenna hesitated, her hand still on the doorknob. For a moment, Elena thought she might say something real, something true. But then the moment passed, and Jenna just nodded. "You look beautiful." "Thanks." The walk down the hallway felt longer than it should have. Elena's heels clicked against the tile, each step a small announcement. She's coming. She's almost there. She's about to do the thing she can't undo. Her father was waiting at the entrance to the main hall. Richard Cross, wearing a suit that was slightly too tight around the middle, his face already flushed from whatever he'd been drinking in the parking lot. He looked at her the way he always did, like he was perpetually disappointed but trying not to show it. "You're late," he muttered, offering his arm. "No, I'm not. The ceremony was supposed to start at 3. It's 3:07. Elena hooked her arm through his, feeling the stiffness in his elbow. "Then we should probably stop talking and walk." The music started before he could respond. That traditional processional march, the one that's been played at 10 million weddings, the notes as familiar as breathing. The doors opened, and Elena Cross walked into the last moments of her old life. The chapel was packed, every pew filled, people standing along the walls. She recognized most of them, neighbors, co-workers, Marcus's extended family that seemed to reproduce exponentially. Faces turned toward her, and she felt their eyes like physical weight, judging the dress, the makeup, whether she was pretty enough, composed enough, worthy enough to be standing here. She kept her eyes forward, locked on the altar. Marcus stood there, tall and handsome in his black tux. His best man, Derek, loud Derek, who'd gotten drunk at the rehearsal dinner and made jokes about the old ball and chain, stood beside him, grinning. The officiant, some friend of Marcus's family who'd gotten ordained online, held a small leather folder. Marcus was smiling, but it wasn't the smile Elena knew. It was something else, something that made her steps falter. Her father's grip tightened on her arm, pulling her forward. They reached the altar. The music faded. Her father didn't kiss her cheek or whisper anything fatherly. He just handed her off like a package being delivered, then retreated to the front pew where her mother sat dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Elena turned to Marcus, her hands cold despite the warmth of the room. He was still smiling. "Hi," she whispered. He didn't respond. The officiant cleared his throat, opening the folder. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." "Actually," Marcus interrupted, his voice loud and clear, "I need to say something first." The officiant blinked. "Oh, well, typically the personal vows come after." "This can't wait." Elena felt her stomach drop. Around them, the chapel had gone quiet. That particular kind of silence that happens when people sense something is wrong but can't look away. "Marcus." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. He turned to face the crowd, still holding that smile. "I want to thank everyone for coming today. I know a lot of you traveled pretty far. My Aunt Carol came all the way from Nebraska." He gestured toward an older woman in the third row who looked confused. That's dedication, right? Scattered, uncertain laughter. The thing is, Marcus continued, his voice steady, conversational, I've been doing a lot of thinking about marriage, about commitment, about what it means to stand up here and promise your life to someone. Elena's hands had started to shake. Marcus, what are you? And I realized something important. He turned to look at her now, and his eyes were cold. Stranger's eyes. Some people are worth that promise, and some people aren't. The silence shifted, became hungry. You're not worth it, Elena. The words landed like stones. She actually flinched, her brain struggling to process what she'd just heard. Around them, the chapel erupted. Gasps, shocked murmurs, someone's phone already out and recording. What? It was all she could manage. Marcus's smile widened. You heard me. I brought everyone here, spent all this money, went through all this trouble, just to make sure you understood. In front of everyone who matters, everyone you know. He gestured to the crowd. You're not worth marrying. Marcus, this isn't funny. It's not supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be honest. He looked past her, addressing the crowd again. See, Elena here, she's got this way of making herself seem like she's worth something. She's polite, she's accommodating, she says all the right things. But underneath, there's nothing there. No spark, no fire. Just this empty, desperate need to be chosen. Elena couldn't breathe, literally couldn't pull air into her lungs. Her vision had started to narrow, the edges going fuzzy. And I almost fell for it, Marcus continued. Almost convinced myself that settling was the same as being smart. But then I realized, why should I settle? Why should any of us settle for less than we deserve? Someone in the crowd laughed. Actual laughter. Elena heard it distinctly, a sharp, ugly sound from somewhere near the back. Her father stood up. Now you wait just a goddamn minute. Sit down, Richard. Marcus didn't even look at him. You know what your daughter is. You've known it her whole life, mediocre, forgettable, the kind of person who fades into the background of every room she's in. More laughter now, scattered at first, then building. Elena turned, trying to find a friendly face, someone who would stand up and stop this, but all she saw were phones, cameras, people recording her humiliation in high definition. Jenna was looking at the floor. Marcus, please. Elena's voice cracked. Why would you? Because you needed to hear it. He stepped closer, and she could smell his cologne, the same one he'd worn on their first date. And because everyone else needed to see it. See what happens when you pretend to be something you're not. When you act like you deserve things you haven't earned. I loved you. The words came out broken. No, you didn't. You loved the idea of being loved. There's a difference. He turned away from her, addressing the crowd one last time. Anyway, sorry for wasting everyone's afternoon. There's still food at the reception hall if anyone wants it. I already paid for it. And then he walked. Just walked straight down the aisle, Derek following behind him, both of them laughing. Actually, laughing. The chapel exploded into noise, people talking over each other, phones out, that horrible, hungry energy of a crowd that's just witnessed something they'll repeat at dinner parties for years. Elena stood frozen at the altar, her dress suddenly too tight, her skin too hot. She could feel herself fragmenting, all the carefully constructed pieces of who she thought she was just falling apart. Her mother was crying. Real tears now, not the happy kind. Her father looked like he wanted to hit something. Jenna still wouldn't meet her eyes. And then, from somewhere in the middle pews, someone started to clap. Slow, deliberate applause. Others joined in. Not everyone, maybe a dozen people, but enough. Enough to make it clear that some people thought this was justified, deserved, entertaining. Something inside Elena didn't break. It burned. She turned and ran. Her heels caught on the hem of her dress, and she nearly went down on the chapel steps. She kicked them off instead, expensive white heels that matched the dress, and kept running. Behind her, she could hear voices calling her name, but they sounded distant, unimportant. The parking lot was a blur of cars and confused guests who'd been smoking outside. She dodged between them, ignoring their questions, their phones still recording. She didn't have a plan, didn't have her purse, her phone, her keys, just the dress and the rage and the horrible, crushing weight of what had just happened. The venue was on the edge of town, backed up against the foothills. Beyond the parking lot, the land started to rise. Scrub brush and pine trees, the mountain proper looming in the distance. The sky had gone dark while she'd been inside, clouds rolling in fast and heavy. Elena didn't stop running. She hit the tree line at full speed, branches catching at her dress, tearing the delicate fabric. The ground was uneven, rocky. Her bare feet found every sharp stone, every root. She didn't care. Behind her, the voices were fading. Ahead, the storm was building. She pushed deeper into the trees, her lungs burning, her vision blurred by tears she didn't remember crying. The air had turned cold, that particular mountain cold that comes before snow. She was wearing a sleeveless wedding dress. In late November, running toward a storm that was about to turn deadly. Some distant, rational part of her brain tried to send up warnings, tried to make her stop, turn around, go back. But that part was small, easily ignored. The louder part, the part that had just been destroyed in front of 200 people, that part wanted to disappear, to cease existing, to run until there was nothing left to run from. The first snowflakes started falling as she cleared the initial tree line, big, wet flakes that melted on her skin. Within minutes, it had become a wall of white. Elena kept climbing. She didn't know how long she walked. Time had stopped meaning anything. The world had narrowed to the next step, the next breath. The dress was ruined now, torn, muddy, soaked through. Her feet were bleeding. She couldn't feel her fingers. The rational part of her brain had gone quiet. The storm had become absolute. She couldn't see more than a few feet in any direction. The wind cut through the wet fabric of her dress like it wasn't there. Her teeth wouldn't stop chattering. She was going to die out here. The thought arrived with strange clarity, almost peaceful. No more humiliation. No more people recording her worst moments. No more pretending to be someone worth loving. Just the cold, and then nothing. Elena's legs gave out. She went down hard, her knees hitting rock, the pain sharp and distant. She tried to stand, but her body wouldn't cooperate anymore. The cold had gotten inside, shutting things down one system at a time. She curled onto her side, the snow already starting to cover her. This was fine. This was better. The wind howled, and Elena Cross closed her eyes. Up. She didn't hear him approach. Didn't see him until he was crouching beside her, a dark shape against the white. Hey! His voice was rough, matter of fact. You planning to die here, or you want to live? Elena tried to respond, but her jaw wouldn't work right. She managed something that might have been words. The shape moved closer. She could make out details now. A heavy coat, dark beard, eyes that were assessing her with the same detachment you'd give a piece of broken equipment. That's a wedding dress, he said. Not a question. Elena's lips moved. Bad wedding, I'd say. He stood looking around at the storm. You got about 20 minutes before hypothermia gets serious, maybe less. So I'm going to ask again. You want to live, or should I keep walking? She should tell him to leave. Let nature finish what Marcus started. But something in his voice, that complete lack of pity, that absolute refusal to treat her like something fragile, cut through the fog. Live, she whispered. Then get up. Can't. Yes, you can. He reached down, grabbed her arm, and hauled her to her feet. No gentleness, no coddling, just raw force. Walk, now. I don't. Walk, or I'm leaving you here. She walked. He kept one hand on her arm, half supporting, half dragging her through the storm. She stumbled constantly, her feet barely functioning. Every time she started to fall, he yanked her upright. Keep moving, don't stop. Who? Doesn't matter, move. The cabin appeared out of the white like something from a dream. Small, sturdy, smoke rising from a chimney. He pushed the door open and shoved her inside. The heat hit her like a wall. After the killing cold, it felt wrong, painful. She stood dripping on the wood floor, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. The man, she could see him clearly now, tall and broad-shouldered, maybe 40, with a face that looked carved from the same rock as the mountain, started moving with efficient purpose. He pulled the ruined dress over her head without asking permission, wrapped her in blankets that smelled like wood smoke, pushed her toward the fire. Sit. Don't move. Elena sat. She didn't have the strength to do anything else. He disappeared into another room, came back with dry clothes, flannel shirt, wool pants, thick socks. Put these on, under the blankets if you're shy about it. She changed mechanically, her fingers barely working. The clothes were too big, but they were warm and dry. He handed her a metal cup. Drink. It was some kind of tea, bitter and hot. She drank it because he was watching, because something in his eyes said refusing wasn't an option. "What's your name?" he asked when she'd finished. "Elena." "Elena what?" "Cross." He nodded once. "I'm Ronan. Ronan Hale. This is my cabin. You're on my mountain." He pulled up a chair, sat across from her. "Now, you want to tell me why I just found a woman in a wedding dress trying to freeze to death in a blizzard?" Elena looked at him, really looked at him. There was no sympathy in his face, no gentle concern, just that same clinical assessment. "I was getting married," she said quietly. "It didn't work out." "Clearly." He leaned back, crossing his arms. "Bad enough to run into a storm without a coat, without shoes?" Her voice caught. "In front of everyone. He told everyone I wasn't worth—" She couldn't finish. "And you believed him." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Everyone did. Everyone saw. The phones, the laughing. So you decided to prove him right by dying in the snow." The bluntness of it hit her like cold water. "I wasn't trying to—" "Yes, you were." Ronan stood, walked to the fire, poked at the logs. "Maybe not consciously, but you ran into a mountain storm in a dress. That's not an accident, that's a choice. You don't know anything about it." "Don't I?" He turned to face her. "Someone hurt you, made you feel small, made you feel worthless. So you ran because running was easier than fighting, than standing up and telling them all to go to hell. I couldn't. You could. You chose not to. And then you chose to keep running all the way up here until the mountain decided whether you lived or died." He moved closer, and there was something fierce in his eyes now. "Well, the mountain chose. You're alive. Question is, what are you going to do about it?" Elena stared at him, this stranger who'd pulled her from death and now stood in his cabin telling her things she didn't want to hear. "I don't know," she whispered. "Then figure it out." He grabbed his coat from a hook by the door. "I need to check the traps before the storm gets worse. There's more tea by the fire, food in the cabinet if you're hungry. Don't touch anything else. Don't go outside. Don't do anything stupid." "Where are you going?" "I told you, traps. Animals don't stop needing food just because there's a storm." He pulled the door open, and the wind howled in. "I'll be back before dark. Try not to die while I'm gone." And then he was gone, the door slamming shut behind him, leaving Elena alone in a stranger's cabin on a mountain that should have killed her. She sat by the fire, wrapped in borrowed blankets and two big clothes, and tried to understand what had just happened. 2 hours ago, she'd been standing at an altar. Now she was here. Elena pulled the blanket tighter and stared into the flames. She must have fallen asleep because when she opened her eyes, the cabin was darker and Ronan was back. He was by the door, shaking snow from his coat, a bundle of something slung over his shoulder. "You're awake," he said, not looking at her. "Yeah." He dumped the bundle on a table, 2 rabbits already gutted. Elena's stomach turned, but she didn't look away. "You know how to cook?" he asked. "I can—" She stopped. Could she? She'd made pasta, reheated takeout, followed recipes from websites. But actual cooking? Not really. "You're going to learn." He pulled a knife from a drawer, started skinning one of the rabbits with quick, practiced movements. "If you're staying here, you work. No free rides." I can't stay here." "Why not?" "Because I have a life, a job, She stopped, realizing how hollow it all sounded. "A what?" "An apartment full of things you bought to impress people you don't like? A job that pays you just enough to keep coming back? A family that lets some asshole humiliate you without fighting back?" Elena felt anger flare. "You don't know my family." "Don't need to. I saw you walk into a blizzard alone. Tells me everything I need to know." He finished with the first rabbit, started on the second. "You can go back if you want. Nobody's keeping you here. But the storm's not letting up for at least 3 days. So either you sit in that chair feeling sorry for yourself, or you make yourself useful. She stood up, the blanket falling away. What do you want me to do? He gestured to the rabbits. Pay attention. I'm only showing you once. Gut. The next 3 days were the hardest of Elena's life. Ronan didn't coddle, didn't sympathize, didn't give her space to wallow. Every morning, he woke her before dawn. Every day, he put her to work, fetching water from the creek, splitting wood, learning to prepare food that didn't come from a package. Her hands blistered, then bled, then calloused. Her muscles screamed. Every night, she collapsed into the narrow cot he'd set up for her, too exhausted to dream. And every night, Ronan sat by the fire, cleaning his rifle or sharpening his knives, not talking unless she asked a direct question. On the second day, she asked why he lived up here alone. Because people are disappointing, he said, not looking up from the knife he was working on, and I got tired of being disappointed. But don't you get lonely? Lonely's better than what people do to each other. He tested the blade's edge against his thumb. You know that now. She did. On the third day, the storm broke. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through the cabin's small window. She got up, started the fire without being told, put water on for tea. Ronan watched her from the doorway. You're learning. Did I have a choice? You always have a choice. He grabbed his coat. Come on. I want to show you something. They walked out into a world transformed by snow. Everything was white and pristine and so bright it hurt to look at. Ronan led her up a narrow trail, not speaking, until they reached a ridge overlooking the valley below. Elena could see the town from here. Small, contained, familiar. Somewhere down there was the chapel. The parking lot. The life she'd left behind. You know what the difference is between you and that town? Ronan asked, his breath misting in the cold air. What? The town's full of people who learn to survive by making themselves smaller, by fitting into spaces other people carved out for them, by accepting whatever scraps of dignity someone decided to throw their way. He turned to look at her. You almost did the same thing, almost let that bastard define what you're worth. He did define it, in front of everyone. No, he told his version, and everyone believed it because that's what people do. They believe the loudest voice, the most confident liar. Ronan pointed toward the valley. You go back down there, they'll all have their version of what happened. Their story about poor Elena who got humiliated at her wedding, and every time you see them, you'll be that story, forever. Elena felt something tighten in her chest. So what am I supposed to do? Stay up here forever? You're supposed to decide who you are, not who they say you are, not who he said you are, who you actually are, underneath all the bullshit. He started walking back toward the cabin. And you can't do that by running away, or by going back. You do it by choosing something new. She followed him down the trail, his words echoing in her head. That night, Elena made dinner without help. Rabbit stew with wild onions and dried herbs from Ronan's stores. It wasn't fancy, but it was edible. More than edible. It was good. Ronan had seconds. You're getting the hang of it, he said, scraping his bowl clean. It's just cooking. Nothing's just anything. Cooking is how you stay alive. Same as chopping wood, same as knowing which plants will kill you and which ones won't. It all matters. He set his bowl aside. How are your feet? Elena looked down. The cuts had mostly healed, replaced by tougher skin. Better. Good. Tomorrow we check the trap line. It's a 6-mile loop. You'll need those feet. 6 miles? You complaining? She met his eyes. No. Something that might have been approval flickered across his face. Get some sleep. We leave at dawn. Eat. The trapline was brutal. 6 miles of rough terrain, steep climbs, frozen streams. Ronan moved through it with easy confidence, checking each trap, resetting the ones that were empty, dispatching the animals that had been caught. Elena watched him kill a fox with a quick twist of its neck. No hesitation, no drama, just efficiency. You gonna be sick? He asked, not unkindly. No. Surprisingly, she wasn't. It was just death. Clean, purposeful death. Not cruel. Not personal. Good, because if you're staying up here, you need to understand this. He held up the fox. The mountain doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care if you're sad or scared or think you deserve better. It just is. And you adapt to it or it kills you. That's the deal. Is that why you stay here? To avoid having to adapt to people? Ronan slung the fox over his shoulder. I stay here because people don't follow rules. The mountain does. It's honest, predictable, harsh, but fair. He started walking again. People lie. They change the rules whenever it suits them, and then they act confused when you can't keep up. Elena thought about Marcus, about how he'd smiled while destroying her. Yeah, I'm learning that. They finished the trap line in silence. By the time they got back to the cabin, Elena's legs were shaking with exhaustion. But she'd made it. All 6 miles. She was getting stronger. A week passed. Then 2. Elena stopped thinking about the town, stopped replaying what had happened at the chapel. There was no room for it up here. Every day was work, real, physical, necessary work. Chopping wood, hauling water, learning to read the weather, to move through the forest without making noise. Ronan taught her to shoot, how to clean a rifle, how to aim, how to control her breathing and squeeze the trigger instead of pulling it. The first time she hit the target, he nodded. Again. She hit it 5 more times. You're a natural, he said, and it was the closest thing to a compliment she'd gotten from him. At night, they sat by the fire. Sometimes Ronan would talk, stories about the mountain, about the animals, about the year he'd spent alone without seeing another person. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, the only sound the crackle of burning wood. Elena started to notice things. The way Ronan moved, economical and sure. The way he never wasted anything, food, fuel, words. The way he looked at the world like it was a puzzle to be solved, not a burden to carry. She wanted to move like that, think like that, be that certain. One night, 3 weeks after the wedding that wasn't, Ronan looked up from the knife he was sharpening. You're different, he said. How? You stopped flinching. Elena realized he was right. The first week she'd jumped at every loud noise, every sudden movement. Now she barely reacted. The mountain had made her steadier. Is that good? She asked. It's necessary. He went back to his knife. Question is, what are you going to do with it? I don't know yet. You should start thinking about it. Spring's coming. Snow will melt. Valley will be accessible again. He tested the blade. You'll have to decide, go back or stay here. And if I stay, then you commit. All the way. No half measures. This life doesn't work if you're always looking over your shoulder at what you left behind. Elena stared into the fire. Down in the valley, her old life was still there. Her apartment, her job, her family. Marcus and Jenna and all the people who'd watched her humiliation and did nothing. But up here, she was becoming something else. Someone who could survive a blizzard. Who could hike 6 miles without complaining? Who could shoot straight and gut a rabbit and split wood until her hands bled? Someone stronger. I need more time, she said finally. Ronan shrugged. Take it, but not too long. The mountain doesn't wait for anyone. Winter deepened. The snow piled higher. The nights grew colder. Elena learned to read the sky, to know when a storm was coming by the smell of the air. She learned which trees made the best firewood, which plants were safe to eat, how to track animals by their prints in the snow. And slowly, day by day, the woman she'd been started to fade. That scared her sometimes. Late at night, lying in her cot, she'd think about her mother, her father, the life she'd abandoned without a word. Were they looking for her? Did they think she was dead? Did she care? The answer was complicated. She cared about them the way you care about people from a story you read long ago. Distant, abstract, not quite real anymore. What felt real was the weight of an axe in her hands, the burn in her muscles after a long day, the satisfaction of hitting a target dead center, the taste of food she'd hunted herself. This was real. Everything else was just noise. One morning in late January, Elena woke to find Ronan already up, standing by the window with his rifle. What's wrong? She asked. Company. She was on her feet immediately, grabbing the smaller rifle he'd given her to practice with. Who? Don't know yet, but someone's coming up the trail, moving slow, like they're not sure where they're going. Elena's heart started pounding. Nobody came up here. Ronan had said so. The cabin was too remote, the trail too difficult. Unless someone was looking for something. Or someone. They waited in tense silence, watching the tree line. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, a figure emerged from the trees. It was a man, middle-aged, wearing an expensive coat that was completely wrong for the terrain. He was breathing hard, his face red with exertion. Elena recognized him instantly. "That's my father," she whispered. Ronan glanced at her. "You want to talk to him?" Did she? Elena watched Richard Cross stumble toward the cabin and felt nothing. No rush of emotion, no relief or anger or joy, just a distant curiosity, like watching a stranger. "I'll hear what he has to say," she said finally. Ronan lowered his rifle. "Your call. But if he causes trouble, he's gone." She nodded. They waited until Richard reached the door. He knocked. Actual polite knocking, like he was visiting a neighbor. Ronan opened it. Richard took one look at Ronan, tall, armed, utterly unimpressed, and seemed to shrink. "I'm looking for my daughter. Elena Cross. I was told she might be—" He spotted Elena behind Ronan. "Elena, thank God. We've been so worried. Your mother's been beside herself. Come on, let's get you home." Elena stepped forward into the light. She was wearing Ronan's clothes, her hair pulled back in a practical braid, her hands rough with calluses. She knew what she looked like. Hard, capable, nothing like the woman her father knew. "Hello, Dad." Richard stared at her. What happened to you?" "I survived." "We thought you were dead. The police searched for weeks. We had to call off the search because of the weather." He looked at Ronan, then back to her. "Who is this man? Has he been keeping you here against your will?" Elena almost laughed. "No, Dad. He saved my life, and then he taught me how to live it. I don't— Elena, you need to come home. This isn't—" He gestured around the cabin. "This isn't you." "It is now. Don't be ridiculous. You're coming home. Now." He reached for her arm. Ronan moved, putting himself between them, not threatening, just present. Richard backed up fast. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I just want my daughter." "And what I want?" Elena asked quietly. "Does that matter?" "Of course it matters. But you're not thinking clearly. You've been through something traumatic and you need—" "What?" "What do I need, Dad? To go back to that town? To face everyone who watched Marcus destroy me? To pretend I'm the same person I was before?" "Marcus is gone. He left town. Nobody blames you for what happened." "Nobody blamed him either, though. Did they?" Richard had no answer for that. Elena stepped around Ronan, facing her father directly. "I appreciate you coming all the way up here, I do. But I'm not going back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You can't stay here. This is insane. You're living in a shack with a stranger in the middle of nowhere. This stranger pulled me out of a blizzard when I was dying. This shack kept me alive through the worst winter in 20 years. And this nowhere?" She gestured to the window, to the vast expanse of mountain and forest. "This is the first place I've ever felt like I can breathe." Richard's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked genuinely lost. "Your mother needs you. My mother has you. She'll be fine. Elena, please, don't do this. Don't throw your life away over some temporary insanity." "I'm not throwing it away. I'm building a new one." They stood there, father and daughter, with nothing left to say. Finally, Richard pulled an envelope from his pocket. "At least take this. It's from your mother. She wanted you to have it." Elena took the envelope, felt the weight of it. A letter. Maybe money. Maybe both. "Tell her I'm okay," she said quietly. "Tell her I'm better than okay." Richard looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he just nodded, turned, and started the long walk back down the mountain. Elena and Ronan watched him go. "You okay?" Ronan asked when her father had disappeared into the trees. "Yeah." Elena realized she meant it. "I am." She opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, her mother's handwriting, shaky and desperate, and a stack of cash. She didn't read the letter. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Instead, she handed the money to Ronan. "For food, supplies, whatever you need." He looked at the cash, then at her. "You sure?" "I'm sure I'm not going back. Not to that life. Not to who I was." She met his eyes. I want to stay here. Learn everything you can teach me. Become someone who doesn't need saving. Something flickered in Ronan's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. It won't be easy, he said. Nothing worth doing is. And when spring comes, when the valley opens up again, I'll deal with it then. Ronan considered her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, then we'd better get to work. You've got a lot to learn before the snow melts. They went back inside, closing the door on the valley below. Elena didn't look back. There was nothing behind her worth seeing, only forward, only the mountain, only the woman she was becoming. The next morning, Elena woke before dawn without being told. The cold air bit at her face as she left the warmth of her blankets, but she moved through it with purpose now. Fire first, then water, then breakfast. Ronan watched her from his cot, silent approval in the way he didn't say anything. By the time the sun crested the ridge, they were both dressed and ready. Today was different, though. Ronan had that look, the one that meant something was about to change. You've been here almost 2 months, he said, strapping on his pack. You know how to shoot, how to cook, how to not freeze to death. That's survival. But survival isn't living. Elena pulled on the heavy coat he'd found for her in a storage trunk. It smelled like mothballs and old leather, but it was warm. What's the difference? Survival is reacting. Living is choosing. He handed her the smaller rifle. Today, you learn to hunt. They left the cabin and moved into the woods, the snow crunching beneath their boots. The forest was different in late winter, quieter, sharper, like the world was holding its breath. Ronan moved through it like a ghost, barely disturbing the ground. Elena tried to copy his steps, the way he placed his weight, but she was still too loud. You're thinking too hard, he said without looking back. Stop trying to be quiet. Just be aware. That doesn't make sense. It will. They walked for an hour following a game trail that wound through the pines. Ronan would stop every so often, examining tracks in the snow, broken branches, the scatter pattern of disturbed ground. Elena watched, trying to see what he saw. Finally, he crouched beside a set of prints. Deer. Young buck, maybe a year old. Moving slow, see how deep the prints are? He's browsing, not running. Ronan looked up at her. Which way is he headed? Elena studied the tracks. They seemed random at first, but then she noticed the pattern. Northwest, toward that stand of birch trees. Why? Because she thought about what Ronan had taught her, what deer needed. The bark. They eat it in winter when there's nothing else. Good. So where do we go? Downwind, circle around and wait. Something that might have been pride flickered across Ronan's face. Let's move. They spent the next 2 hours positioning themselves, waiting in absolute silence. Elena's legs cramped. Her fingers went numb despite her gloves. But she didn't move, didn't complain. Ronan had taught her that patience was half the hunt. The buck appeared just before noon, young and cautious, his breath misting in the cold air. He moved toward the birch trees exactly as Elena had predicted, stopping every few steps to test the wind. Ronan leaned close, his voice barely a whisper. You're shot. Aim for the shoulder, squeeze, don't pull, breathe out slow. Elena raised the rifle, finding the buck in her sights. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was different than targets. This was life, about to become death, and she was the one deciding. The buck lowered his head to strip bark from a tree. Elena breathed out, squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked through the silence. The buck stumbled, took 2 steps, and collapsed. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Ronan stood, touched her shoulder once. Clean shot. He didn't suffer. They approached the deer together. Elena stared at it, at the animal she'd killed, and waited for guilt or horror or something. Instead, she felt calm, steady. This was food. This was survival. This was the mountain's bargain, brutal and fair. You did good, Ronan said. Now comes the hard part. He taught her to field dress it right there in the snow, his hands guiding hers through the necessary cuts, the careful removal of organs. It was messy work, blood on her hands and clothes, the smell of death sharp in the cold air. But Elena didn't flinch, didn't turn away. This was the truth of living. The part people in town never saw, never had to think about. They bought their meat in plastic wrap and pretended it came from nowhere. But Elena knew better now. Knew the weight of a life taken, the responsibility of it. They hauled the carcass back to the cabin, taking turns with the load. By the time they arrived, Elena's shoulders were screaming and her back felt like it might break. But she'd done it, all of it. That night, they ate fresh venison cooked over the fire. The best meal Elena had ever tasted because she'd earned every bite. "You're not squeamish," Ronan observed, watching her eat. "Should I be?" "Most people are. They like their meat, but they don't want to know where it comes from, don't want to do the work." Elena thought about her old life, grocery stores and restaurants, and never once considering what it actually took to feed herself. "I was one of those people. And now? Now I understand the cost of things." Ronan nodded, satisfied. "Good, because understanding cost is how you know what matters." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling the shutters. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said finally. "You're going to anyway. Why do you help me? You could have left me in that storm, could have sent me back down with my father, but you didn't." Ronan stared into the fire for a long time. "You know what I see when I look at you?" "What?" "Someone who was dying long before that storm. Dying slow, piece by piece, letting the world hollow you out." He met her eyes. "I've seen that before. In myself, years ago. And I know what it takes to come back from it." "What does it take?" "A reason to be hard. A reason to stop bending." He poked at the fire with a stick. "That fiancé of yours, he thought he was destroying you. But really, he did you a favor. Showed you what happens when you give people power over who you are." Elena felt something twist in her chest. "I loved him." "No, you didn't. You loved what he represented. Safety, belonging, someone choosing you." Ronan's voice was flat, factual. "But that's not love. That's just fear wearing a different face." "You sound pretty sure about that." "I am, because I did the same thing once. Built my whole life around what other people wanted, what they expected. And when it all fell apart, I blamed them. Took me years to realize the truth." "What truth?" "That I'd given them that power, handed it over like it was nothing, then got angry when they used it." He stood, grabbed his coat. "You want to know the real difference between down there and up here? Down there, people measure their worth by how much others approve of them. Up here, the only approval that matters is whether you survive the night." He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the latch. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we're working on tracking, real tracking, not just following obvious prints." After he left to check the perimeter, Elena sat alone by the fire, his words circling in her head. She thought about Marcus, about the wedding, about all the times she'd bent herself into shapes that weren't her own just to make other people comfortable. No more. The fire popped, sending sparks up into the darkness. Elena added another log and watched it catch, thinking about cost and choice and the person she was becoming. Outside, the mountain wind howled, and Elena smiled. Met. Spring came slowly to the high country, one grudging degree at a time. The snow began to melt in earnest by late March, revealing a landscape Elena had never seen, rocky slopes dotted with early wildflowers, streams running full and fast with snowmelt, animals emerging from winter dens, hungry and aggressive. Ronan taught her to read it all, which plants were edible and which would kill her, how to navigate by the sun and stars, how to move through the forest without leaving a trail, how to think like the animals she hunted, anticipating their movements 3 steps ahead. Some days were brutal. She took a nasty fall crossing a swollen creek, gashed her leg open on a submerged rock. Ronan cleaned and stitched it without anesthetic, his hands steady, while she bit down on a leather strap and tried not to scream. "Pain is just information," he said, pulling the thread through. "Tells you what to avoid next time." Other days were perfect. Moments of clarity so sharp they hurt. Standing on a ridge at sunrise, the whole valley spread below her like a promise. Watching an eagle hunt. The satisfaction of hitting a moving target at 100 yards. Elena was changing, and she knew it. Her body had become lean and hard, all soft edges burned away by months of work. Her hands were scarred and calloused. Her hair had grown long and wild. When she caught her reflection in the creek, she barely recognized herself. She looked dangerous. She liked it. One evening in early April, Ronan came back from checking the trap line with news. Town's starting to wake up. Saw smoke from chimneys I haven't seen lit in months. Roads will be clear soon. Elena felt her stomach tighten. How soon? Week, maybe 2. And then what? Ronan shrugged. Then people can get up here easier. Hunters, hikers. Your father again, probably. He looked at her directly. You need to decide what you want. Because once that road opens, this place stops being a sanctuary. Elena had known this was coming, but knowing didn't make it easier. Up here, she'd been safe, protected by winter and isolation. But spring meant exposure, meant facing what she'd left behind. I'm not going back, she said. I know, but they might not accept that. Let them try. Something shifted in Ronan's expression. You mean that? Every word. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. All right then, if you're staying, we do this right. No more training wheels. You need to be able to handle yourself completely. That means hand-to-hand, real fighting, not theory. I don't know how to fight. You're about to learn. They started the next morning. Ronan was a brutal teacher, pulling no punches, giving no quarter. Elena took hits that knocked the wind out of her, that left bruises blooming purple across her ribs. She hit the ground so many times she lost count, but she kept getting up. You're too nice, Ronan said, circling her. You pull your strikes. You apologize with your eyes before you even move. I don't want to hurt you. Then you've already lost. He came at her fast, sweeping her legs. She went down hard. The mountain doesn't care about your intentions. Neither will anyone who comes looking for you, so stop being nice and start being effective. Elena pushed herself up, tasting blood from a split lip. Something hot and fierce was building in her chest. All those months of swallowing anger, of being told she wasn't enough, of watching people laugh while she broke apart. She came at Ronan swinging. He blocked her first 2 strikes, but the third caught him in the ribs. Hard enough to make him grunt. He grinned, wolfish and approving. There she is, again. They went at it for another hour. Elena learned to fight dirty, eyes, throat, knees, learned that fair fights were for people who could afford to lose, learned that her smaller size was an advantage if she was fast enough, mean enough. By the end, they were both breathing hard, both marked up, but Elena was smiling. Better, Ronan said. Much better. Now you're starting to understand. Understand what? That being dangerous is a choice, and choices are power. The road opened on a Tuesday in mid-April. Elena knew because she heard the vehicles, 2 trucks grinding their way up the mountain road, engines straining against the grade. She and Ronan were working on the cabin's roof, replacing shingles damaged by winter storms when the sound reached them. Ronan straightened, listening. That's not hunters. How do you know? Wrong time of day. Too early, too deliberate. He climbed down from the roof, grabbed his rifle. Stay here. Like hell. Elena grabbed her own weapon and followed. They positioned themselves in the tree line with a clear view of the approach road. The trucks came into view, big, expensive, the kind of vehicles people from town drove when they wanted to feel tough. Elena's breath caught when she saw who was driving the first one. Marcus. He'd brought friends. 5 men total, all of them armed, all of them looking like they'd come ready for trouble. They parked the trucks in the clearing below the cabin and got out. Marcus in the lead, his face set with the same arrogant confidence he'd worn on their wedding day. Elena! He called out, not looking up the hill, not seeing them in the trees. I know you're up here. Your father told us where to find you. Ronan glanced at her. You know these men? The one doing the talking is Marcus, my ex-fiancé. Elena's hands had tightened on her rifle. I don't know the others. The way they're carrying those guns, they're not just here to talk. No, they're not. Marcus called out again, louder this time. Come on, Elena. Stop playing games. This has gone on long enough. You've made your point, had your little adventure. Time to come home. Elena felt something cold settle into her spine. He thinks I'm still his. Are you? She looked at Ronan, this man who'd saved her life and then taught her how to own it. No. Then show him. Elena stood, stepped out of the tree line into clear view. She didn't raise her weapon, just let them see her. Hard, scarred, nothing like the woman Marcus had humiliated. He saw her and stopped mid-sentence, actually taking a step back. Jesus. Elena. Go home, Marcus. What happened to you? You look... He caught himself. Never mind. Look, we need to talk. Your family is worried sick. People are asking questions. Let them ask. Marcus laughed, but it sounded forced. Come on. You can't actually be serious about staying up here with some mountain man. This isn't you. You don't know what I am anymore. I know you're not this. He gestured at her, at the rifle, at the mountains behind her. This is crazy, Elena. You need help. We're here to bring you back, get you the support you need. One of the other men, thick-necked, mean-eyed, spoke up. We can do this easy or hard, lady. Your choice. Ronan appeared beside Elena, rifle held casual but ready. And you are? Marcus's eyes narrowed. You must be the guy who's been keeping her up here, filling her head with nonsense. I don't fill anyone's head with anything. I just teach them how to survive. She doesn't need to survive. She needs to come home, back to civilization. Marcus took a step forward. Look, friend, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but Elena is coming with us. So why don't you just step aside and let us handle this? Can't do that. I wasn't asking. The air got very still, very tense. Elena watched the other men spread out slightly, hands moving toward their weapons. They'd come ready for this, planned for it. Marcus, she said, her voice steady, you need to leave. Now. I'm not leaving without you. Then you're not leaving. His face darkened. Don't be stupid. There's 5 of us, 2 of you. The math isn't hard. Neither is the terrain. Ronan's voice was flat, factual. You're standing in a kill box. Low ground, no cover, limited exits. My partner and I have high ground, concealment, and every advantage. So if you're thinking about doing something stupid, think harder. The thick-necked man laughed. Big talk from an old man with a deer rifle. This old man has killed things a lot more dangerous than you. Some of them were even animals. Elena felt a fierce pride surge through her. This was what strength looked like. Not Marcus's performative confidence, his need to dominate and control, but Ronan's absolute certainty, built on skill and experience and the kind of hardness that came from survival. Marcus seemed to sense the shift. His voice got sharper, more desperate. Elena, please. Whatever he's told you, whatever he's done to you, it's not too late. Come back with us. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix. Yes, there is. Look at yourself. You're filthy. You're scarred. You're living like an animal. His voice cracked slightly. I made a mistake, okay? What I did at the wedding, that was wrong. I was angry. I wasn't thinking. But we can get past it. Start over. I still care about you. Elena stared at him, this man who'd destroyed her in front of everyone she knew and felt absolutely nothing. No love, no hate, not even anger. Just a distant curiosity, like watching an insect struggle. You don't care about me, she said quietly. You care about control, about winning, about not being the guy who got rejected by the woman he humiliated. That's not... It is. And you know what the funny thing is? I should thank you. Elena smiled, cold and sharp. Because if you hadn't done what you did, I'd still be down there, still trying to be small enough, quiet enough, good enough for people like you. But you freed me from that, showed me exactly what I was worth to your world. Elena, which is why I'm staying here, where worth is measured in what you can do, not what you can pretend to be. Marcus's face twisted. Fine. You want to play it this way? You're coming back anyway. We'll drag you if we have to. He nodded to his men. They started moving forward, hands on their weapons. Ronan's rifle came up in one smooth motion. Last warning. Take another step, and we put you down. The thick-necked man drew his pistol. You threatening us, old man? The shot came from somewhere to the left. Not Ronan's rifle, not Elena's. A third shooter, positioned in the high rocks. The bullet hit the ground 3 inches from the thick-necked man's boot, kicking up dirt. Everyone froze. That was the warning, Ronan called out. My friend up there doesn't miss. Next round goes through something important. Marcus looked around, suddenly uncertain. Who else is up there? Does it matter? Ronan asked. You came up here thinking you had numbers. But this is our mountain. We know every inch of it. Every shooting position, every line of sight, every trail in and out. You're not taking anyone anywhere. This is kidnapping. We'll bring the police. Go ahead. Tell them you came up here armed, threatened 2 people on their own property, and got run off by folks defending themselves. Ronan smiled without humor. See how that plays. Maton. One of Marcus's men, younger, smarter looking than the others, spoke up. Marcus, maybe we should... Shut up. Marcus was staring at Elena, and something ugly was moving behind his eyes. You think you're so tough now, so strong? You're nothing. You're still the same pathetic woman who needed me to feel worth anything. And you know what? I'm done pretending you matter. He reached for his own gun. Elena's rifle was up and aimed before he cleared the holster. Center mass steady as stone. Don't, she said. Marcus froze, his hand on the weapon, caught between pride and survival. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then, slowly, he let his hand drop. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is. Elena's voice was hard as iron. Go back to town. Tell everyone you came up here and I sent you away. Tell them I'm crazy, I'm dangerous, I'm whatever you need to tell them to sleep at night. But don't come back, because next time, I won't warn you. Marcus wanted to argue. She could see it on his face, the desperate need to have the last word, to win somehow. But Ronan's rifle was still trained on him, and that third shooter in the rocks was still out there, and his own men were starting to back toward the trucks. Finally, he turned and walked away. This is insane, he shouted over his shoulder. You're throwing your life away for what? To live in the dirt with some crazy hermit? Elena didn't respond, just kept her rifle up until all 5 men were back in their trucks, until the engine started, until they were grinding back down the mountain road. Only when the sound of the engines faded completely did she lower her weapon. Ronan was watching her with something like respect. You handled that well. I almost shot him. I know, but you didn't. That's discipline. He whistled, 2 short, sharp notes. A few minutes later, a woman emerged from the rocks above them, rifle slung over her shoulder. She was maybe 60, lean and weathered, with gray hair pulled back in a braid. Nice shooting, Margaret, Ronan called out. The woman, Margaret, descended the slope with easy confidence. Haven't had that much fun in months. Who were those idiots? Ex-fiancé and his friends, coming to rescue Elena from herself. Margaret looked Elena up and down, taking in the scars, the hard edges, the way she held herself now. You need rescuing? Not anymore. Good. World has enough victims. Margaret extended a hand. Margaret Chen. I've got a place about 3 miles north. Ronan and I watch each other's backs when townfolk get stupid. Elena shook her hand, feeling the same kind of work-hardened strength she'd developed in her own grip. Thank you for the backup. Don't mention it. Anyone willing to tell their ex-fiancé to go to hell has got my vote. She looked at Ronan. They'll be back, you know. Men like that don't let things go. I know. Want me to stick around? Keep an eye out? For tonight, yeah. After that, we'll see. Margaret nodded and headed toward the cabin, already making herself at home. Elena watched her go, then turned to Ronan. She's like you, Elena said. She's like us. Someone who got tired of the world's rules and made her own. How many more are there? Up here, I mean. More than you'd think. The mountain attracts a certain type. People who got pushed too far, broke too hard, and decided to stop breaking. He started walking back toward the cabin. Come on, we need to talk about what comes next. Inside, Margaret had already started a fire and was putting water on for tea. She moved through Ronan's space like she'd been there 100 times, which she probably had. So, Margaret said, settling into a chair. Marcus and his boys, they seemed pretty determined. They were, Elena said. And you sent them away, which means they'll come back with more. More men, more guns, maybe even the law if they can convince someone you're being held against your will. I'm not. I know that, you know that. But people believe what they want to believe. And a woman choosing to live up here instead of going back to town? That doesn't fit their story. Margaret sipped her tea. So what's your play? Elena looked at Ronan, then at Margaret. These two people who'd built lives on their own terms and defended them with absolute conviction. She thought about Marcus's face when she'd pointed that rifle at him. The fear there, the realization that she wasn't who he'd known anymore. "I'm not running," she said finally, "and I'm not hiding. This is my home now. If they want to take me, they'll have to try harder than that." Margaret grinned. "I like her, Ronan. She's got spine. She's learning." Ronan was cleaning his rifle, methodical and thorough. But learning isn't enough if they come back with 20 men instead of 5. "So we prepare," Elena said. "Make it harder. Make it not worth the effort. Or we make it impossible." Margaret leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "You know what people down there understand? Strength, power. The appearance of it, anyway. Right now, you're just one woman who ran away. But if you become something else, something they can't dismiss or explain away, they'll stop trying." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you stop hiding. Stop letting them define what happened. Tell your own story, your own way. Make them see you as someone who chose this life, not someone who ran from theirs." Ronan was nodding slowly. "The radio station. In town. They love this kind of thing. Local woman survives blizzard, builds new life in the mountains. Human interest story. And once it's out there," Margaret continued, "once people know you're here by choice, thriving, not suffering, it gets a lot harder for Marcus to play the concerned ex-fiancé trying to save you." Elena felt something click into place. "We take control of the narrative." "Exactly. But that means going back down, into town. For a day. Maybe less. Just long enough to make your case public." Margaret shrugged. "Or you can stay up here and wait for them to come back with reinforcements. Your choice." It was a choice. Everything was, Elena was learning. Stay hidden and safe, but always looking over her shoulder. Or step into the light, own what she'd become, and dare anyone to challenge it. "When?" she asked. "Soon as possible," Ronan said. "Before Marcus has time to spin his version." Elena nodded, her mind already working through what she'd say, how she'd say it. Not the old Elena, apologetic and small, but this version, hard, certain, unbreakable. "All right," she said. "Let's do it." Margaret raised her teacup in a mock toast. "To choosing the hard thing." Elena touched her own cup to Margaret's. "To choosing anything at all." Outside, the sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of fire. The world below was waking up to spring, getting ready to come calling. But up here, Elena Cross was ready for them. She'd learned to survive winter, learned to hunt, to fight, to stand her ground. Now she'd learned to win. They left for town 3 days later, giving Elena time to prepare herself for what was coming. Margaret stayed behind to watch the cabin, her rifle always within reach, her eyes scanning the tree line like she expected trouble. She probably did. The drive down was strange. Elena sat in Ronan's old truck, watching familiar landmarks slide past the window. The bend in the road where she'd crashed her car as a teenager, the overlook where Marcus had proposed, the gas station where everyone stopped for coffee on Sunday mornings. It all looked smaller now, less significant. "You nervous?" Ronan asked, his hand steady on the wheel. "No." Elena realized it was true. "I'm angry." "Good. Angry's useful. Just don't let it make you stupid." They'd planned this carefully. No ambush, no drama. Just a call to the local radio station, KMNR, the only one in 3 counties, and a simple request. Elena Cross, the woman who'd disappeared after her wedding, wanted to tell her story. The station manager had nearly fallen over himself agreeing. Human interest gold, he'd called it. The station was in a strip mall on the edge of town, wedged between a nail salon and a tax preparation office. Ronan parked the truck and looked at Elena. "Last chance to change your mind." "I'm not changing anything." "Then let's go make some people uncomfortable." Inside, the station manager, a balding man named Phil, who wore too much cologne, practically vibrated with excitement. "Elena, my goodness, we were so worried when you disappeared. Everyone's been asking about you." Elena doubted that, but she nodded. "I appreciate the concern." "And you must be—" Phil looked at Ronan uncertainly. "Ronan Hale. I own property up on Cascade Ridge." "Ah, yes, the old Hale place. My father used to hunt up that way. Phil gestured toward the broadcast booth. Well, come on in. We've got about 10 minutes before we go live. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm fine. The booth was small, cramped, filled with equipment that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 90s. The host, a woman in her 50s named Diana Ross, no relation to the singer as she immediately clarified, had that professional radio voice, warm and inviting. Elena, thank you so much for coming in. I know this must be difficult. It's not difficult, it's necessary. Diana blinked, readjusting. Right, well, we'll just have a conversation, nothing too intense. People are curious about where you've been. What happened? I know what they're curious about, and I'm going to tell them. Something in Elena's tone made Diana sit up straighter. This wasn't going to be the tearful reconciliation story she'd probably imagined. This was something else. The on-air light clicked on. Diana's voice shifted into broadcast mode, smooth and practiced. Good afternoon, listeners. This is Diana Ross, and today we have a very special guest. Many of you will remember the unfortunate incident last November at the Riverside Chapel, when a wedding ceremony took an unexpected turn. The bride from that day, Elena Cross, disappeared shortly after and hasn't been heard from publicly since. Until now. Elena, welcome. Thanks for having me. I think the first question everyone wants to know, where have you been? On Cascade Ridge, living in a cabin, learning to survive. Diana paused, clearly expecting more. That's quite a change from your previous life. What made you decide to go there? Elena looked directly at the microphone, imagining all the people listening. People who'd been at that wedding, people who'd laughed, people who'd done nothing. I didn't decide, I ran. After what happened at the chapel, after being humiliated in front of 200 people, I couldn't breathe down here anymore. So I ran straight into a blizzard that should have killed me. Would have killed me if Ronan hadn't found me. Ronan Hale, who's here with you today? Yes. He pulled me out of the snow, kept me alive, and then taught me how to actually live instead of just existing. Diana leaned forward. That must have been a difficult transition, from wedding day to wilderness survival. It wasn't difficult, it was necessary. Elena's voice was steady, clear. You want to know what difficult is? Difficult is spending your whole life making yourself smaller so other people feel bigger. Difficult is being told you're not worth loving in front of everyone you know and having nobody stand up for you. Difficult is realizing that the life you built was really just a cage you didn't know you were in. The booth went very quiet. Even Phil, watching through the glass, had stopped moving. So you stayed on the mountain, Diana said carefully. By choice? Absolutely by choice. Best decision I ever made. But your family, your friends, they've been worried about you. Your father came to the station several times asking if anyone had information. My father knew where I was. I sent word through him that I was safe. What he was worried about wasn't my safety. It was what people would think, how it would look. Diana cleared her throat. That seems harsh. It's honest. There's a difference. Elena leaned back in her chair. Here's what people need to understand. I'm not a victim. I'm not some poor woman who got her heart broken and ran away to hide. I'm someone who got shown exactly how little her old life was worth and decided to build a better one. And Marcus Webb? Your former fiancé? How do you feel about him now? Elena smiled, cold and sharp. I feel nothing. He's irrelevant. He thought he was destroying me that day, but really he was freeing me, showing me that I'd been living for other people's approval instead of my own standards. He's claimed that you're being held against your will, that Mr. Hale has manipulated you somehow. Of course he has. Because the alternative, that I chose this, that I'm happier without him, that's unbearable for someone like Marcus. He needs me to be broken, to be wrong, to be crazy. Because if I'm not, then he has to face what he actually is. Ronan, standing in the corner, was watching her with something like pride. Diana was scrambling now, trying to regain control of the interview. So you have no plans to return to your previous life? None. I'm building something real up there. Something that doesn't depend on what other people think or whether they approve. I hunt my own food, chop my own wood, stand on my own 2 feet. I've learned more about who I am in 5 months on that mountain than in 28 years down here. But surely you miss certain things. Convenience, comfort, Community? I have community. Margaret Chen, Ronan, others who live up there, people who respect strength and honesty, who don't smile to your face while recording your worst moments on their phones. Elena leaned toward the microphone. And for anyone listening who was there that day, who laughed, who filmed it, who did nothing while someone deliberately destroyed another person, I want you to know something. I don't forgive you. I don't need to. Because your opinion of me stopped mattering the moment I walked into those trees. The silence that followed was absolute. Diana looked like she'd been hit with a brick. That's very direct. It's the truth. People here wanted a story about redemption or reconciliation. About me coming back and fitting into the nice little narrative where everything works out, and nobody has to feel uncomfortable. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is I'm telling you all that I'm done. Done pretending, done shrinking, done caring whether you think I'm making the right choices. Diana glanced at Phil through the glass. He was gesturing frantically. Keep going. This is gold. What would you say to other people who might be in similar situations, who feel trapped or diminished? Elena thought about it, really thought. I'd say stop waiting for permission to live your life. Stop measuring your worth by other people's standards. And if something breaks you badly enough, use it. Let it burn away everything that wasn't real anyway. Then build something new from what's left. And if people don't understand, don't approve, then they're not your people. Diana sat back, clearly out of script. Is there anything else you'd like people to know? Just one thing. I'm not coming back. Not to town, not to that life, not to who I used to be. So if anyone's planning another rescue mission like the one Marcus attempted last week, armed men showing up at my home, threatening me, understand that it won't end well. I've learned to defend what's mine, and I will. Phil's face through the glass had gone pale. This was way beyond human interest now. You're saying there was a confrontation? Diana asked. I'm saying Marcus brought 5 armed men to my cabin and tried to force me to leave. We sent them away, peacefully, that time. But if it happens again, I won't be asking nicely. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise. I'm not afraid anymore, not of him, not of judgment, not of what people think. And that's the most dangerous thing in the world. Someone who has nothing left to lose and everything to defend. Diana wrapped up the interview shortly after, probably sensing that letting Elena keep talking was going to cause problems for the station. But the damage was done. Or the good was done, depending on perspective. Outside in the parking lot, Ronan lit a cigarette and leaned against the truck. You didn't hold back. Was I supposed to? No, you did exactly what needed doing. Took the narrative away from them, made it yours. He exhaled smoke. But you also just made a lot of people very angry. Good. Let them be angry. They'll come, you know, some to gawk, some to argue, some to try and save you from yourself. Let them try. Ronan studied her face, seeing something there that satisfied him. You really have changed. I had good teachers. They were about to leave when a car pulled up fast, tires squealing slightly. A woman got out, mid-50s, well-dressed, Elena's mother. Elena! Catherine Cross rushed toward them, her face a mess of emotions. Elena, please, we need to talk. Elena turned, keeping the truck between them. Hello, Mom. What were you thinking? That interview? Do you know what people are going to say? I know exactly what they're going to say. I just stopped caring. Catherine's face crumpled. How can you be so cruel? After everything we've been through, everything we've done for you, what have you done for me, Mom? Really think about it. We raised you, loved you, gave you everything you needed. You gave me everything you thought I should want. There's a difference. Elena's voice was gentle but firm. And when I needed you most, when Marcus was destroying me in front of everyone, where were you? I was there. I was in the front row. You were crying, dabbing your eyes with a tissue. But you didn't stand up, didn't stop him, didn't tell everyone to shut up and leave. You just sat there and let it happen. Catherine looked like she'd been slapped. What was I supposed to do, make a scene? Yes, exactly that. Make a scene, defend your daughter. Show everyone that treating me like that wasn't acceptable. Elena stepped around the truck, facing her mother directly. But you didn't, because you were more worried about what people would think than about what I needed. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's true. Catherine's hands were shaking. So this is it? You're just going to abandon your family? Live like some kind of savage in the woods? I'm not a savage. I'm free. And you're not my family anymore. Not the way you were. Because family protects each other. Family stands up. You taught me to sit down and be quiet and accept whatever crumbs people decided to give me. Well, I'm done accepting crumbs. Elena, please, I'm begging you, don't do this. Come home. We can work through this together. Elena looked at this woman who'd raised her, who'd meant well in her own limited way, and felt a deep sadness. Not anger, just grief for what could have been. I am home, Mom. For the first time in my life, I'm actually home. The cabin? That's not a home. It's a hovel. It's mine. Built with my own hands, defended by my own strength. Nobody can take it from me unless I let them. Can you say the same about your house, your life? Or are you still living by rules other people made? Catherine had no answer. She just stood there, tears running down her carefully made-up face, looking small and lost. Elena felt something soften slightly. I don't hate you. I don't even blame you, not really. You did the best you could with what you knew, but it wasn't enough, and I can't live like that anymore. So that's it? You're just done with us? I'm done with who I had to be when I was with you. If you want to know the real me, the one I'm becoming, you know where to find me. But you'll have to accept her on her terms, not yours. Catherine looked at Ronan, standing silent by the truck. This is your fault. You poisoned her against us. Ronan just shook his head. Lady, I didn't poison anyone. I just showed her what she was capable of. The rest was all her. You're a manipulator, a predator. Think what you want. Doesn't change facts. He opened the truck door. Elena, we should go. Weather's turning. Elena nodded, moving toward the passenger side. Catherine grabbed her arm. Please, don't go. Not like this. Elena gently removed her mother's hand. I love you, I do, but I love myself more now. And that's something I learned up there, in that hovel you're so worried about. I learned that I'm worth protecting, worth defending, worth choosing. She got in the truck. Ronan started the engine. Through the window, Elena watched her mother standing in the parking lot, getting smaller as they pulled away. Part of her ached, but a larger part felt lighter, like she'd put down a weight she'd been carrying so long she'd forgotten it was there. That was hard, Ronan said after a few miles. Yeah. You okay? Elena thought about it. I will be. They drove in silence for a while, leaving town behind. As they climbed back toward the mountains, Elena felt her breathing ease. The air got cleaner, colder, real. Think the interview will change anything? She asked. Already has. You drew a line in the dirt. Now people know where you stand. And Marcus? He'll come. Men like that always do. Can't help themselves. Ronan glanced at her. Question is, are you ready? Elena thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago. Afraid, small, willing to accept any treatment rather than stand alone. Then she thought about who she was now. Hard edges and calloused hands and the absolute certainty that she'd rather die than go back. I'm ready. They reached the cabin as the sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of purple and gold. Margaret was on the porch, rifle across her lap, reading a book. How'd it go? She called out. Exactly like it needed to, Elena said, climbing out of the truck. Good, because we've had visitors. 3 carloads spaced out through the day. Nobody came up the drive, just sat at the bottom of the road watching, took pictures. Reporters? Ronan asked. Some, maybe one was press. The others looked like townspeople, curious. Or planning. Margaret stood, stretched. Yeah, that's what I figured too. So I made myself visible. Let them see the rifle. Let them know this place is defended. They leave. Eventually, but they'll be back. Your little radio interview is probably spreading like wildfire right about now. Elena felt something coil tight in her chest. This was it. The moment where theory became reality, where all her training and preparation got tested. Then we get ready, she said. That night, the 3 of them sat around the fire making plans. Margaret knew the terrain even better than Ronan, knew every approach, every weak point. They marked out defensive positions, established fallback routes, cached supplies and ammunition in strategic locations. If they come in force, Margaret said, sketching in the dirt, they'll try to surround the cabin. Standard tactics. So we don't defend the cabin. We defend this. She circled a wider area. The whole ridge. Make it impossible to move without us knowing. Tripwires? Elena asked. Some, but mostly awareness. You, me, Ronan. We rotate watches, we stay sharp, we don't give them any openings. Ronan was cleaning his rifle again, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. How long can we keep that up? As long as we need to. The question isn't how long, it's what happens when they finally make their move. We beat them back, Elena said simply. Or we make an example that nobody forgets, Margaret added. Make it clear that coming up here is a mistake, that we're not victims to be rescued or criminals to be caught. We're people defending our home, and we'll do whatever that takes. The fire popped, sending sparks into the darkness. Elena stared into the flames, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The wedding that wasn't, the storm, Ronan pulling her from the snow. Every lesson, every hardship, every moment that had forged her into something new. They think I'm weak, she said quietly. They think I'm broken or crazy or manipulated. They can't imagine that someone would choose this life over theirs. Let them think that, Ronan said. Makes them sloppy. No. Elena looked up, her eyes hard. I want them to understand. Not before. After. When they're nursing their wounds and trying to explain what happened, I want them to know they underestimated me. That the woman they thought they knew is gone, and what replaced her is something they should have left alone. Margaret smiled, wolfish and approving. Now you're thinking like a survivor. They worked late into the night, preparing. By the time Elena finally crawled into her cot, every muscle aching, she felt ready. Not confident, she wasn't stupid, but ready. Whatever came next, she'd face it standing up. The attack came 4 days later, just before dawn. Elena was on watch, positioned in the rocks above the cabin, when she heard the vehicles. Multiple engines, moving slow, trying to be quiet. She signaled Ronan and Margaret, 2 quick flashes of her light, and settled into position. There were more of them than expected. 8 trucks, maybe 30 people total. Some she recognized from town. Others were strangers, probably hired muscle. And in the lead vehicle, directing everything with angry gestures, was Marcus. He'd brought an army. Elena felt her heart rate spike, then deliberately slowed her breathing. Training took over. Assess the threat, count the weapons. Identify the leaders. Plan the response. Ronan appeared beside her, moving silent as smoke. 30 at least, maybe more in the back vehicles. I see them. This is more than a rescue mission. This is a siege. Can we hold? Against 30? Not indefinitely. He was scanning the group with binoculars. But we don't need to hold forever, just long enough to make them regret coming. Margaret radioed from her position on the south ridge. They're spreading out, trying to flank. I count 10 breaking off toward the creek approach. Let them, Ronan said into his radio. The trap line is set. They'll hit the alarms before they get close. Elena watched Marcus directing his people, saw the determination on his face. He'd convinced himself this was righteous, that he was saving her, that force was justified because he knew better than she did what she needed. He was wrong, and he was about to find out how wrong. The first group hit the tripwire at the creek. Bells started jangling, simple alarm bells tied to fishing line, but loud enough to carry. The whole mountain seemed to wake up, birds startling into flight, animals crashing through undergrowth. Marcus's people froze, suddenly aware they'd been detected. Ronan's voice boomed out across the clearing, amplified by the terrain. You're on private property. You have 30 seconds to leave before we defend it. Marcus grabbed a bullhorn from one of his trucks. Elena, I know you're up there. This has gone far enough. These people are here to help you. We're not leaving without you. Elena stood up, visible on the ridge, rifle in hand. Then you're not leaving. Even from a distance, she could see Marcus's face twist with rage. You're going to shoot us? Your own neighbors? People who care about you? You don't care about me. You care about winning. About control. About not being the guy who got rejected. Her voice carried across the clearing, clear and strong. And these people? They're trespassing, armed, threatening me on my own land. So yeah, Marcus, if you don't leave right now, I'm going to defend myself. You're insane. I'm awake. There's a difference. Marcus turned to his people, rallying them. She's being coerced. Can't you see that? We need to get her away from these criminals. But some of his people were already backing up, looking at the high ground, at the defensive positions, at the steep terrain they'd have to cross under fire. This wasn't what they'd signed up for. This was real. And they were exposed. One of the hired guns spoke up. Man, this is crazy. I'm not getting shot for some domestic dispute. You're paid to follow orders. I'm paid to provide security, not storm a fortified position. He lowered his weapon. Count me out. Others started backing away too. Marcus's army was fracturing before it even moved. Fine, you cowards can leave. The rest of us will handle this. Marcus grabbed a rifle from his truck, started toward the trail up. That's when Margaret fired. The shot hit the ground 3 feet in front of Marcus, close enough to spray him with dirt. He stumbled back, fell on his ass, scrambled behind the truck. Next one's not a warning, Margaret's voice rang out. For a long moment, everything hung in balance. Marcus behind the truck, his remaining supporters looking scared and uncertain, Elena and her people holding the high ground. The mountain morning was bright and clear, perfect for shooting. Then one of Marcus's friends, the smart-looking one from before, spoke up. Marcus, man, this is suicide. Look at the terrain. Look at their positions. We're in a kill box. If they wanted us dead, we already would be. Shut up! No, I'm not shutting up. I came because you said she was in danger. But that woman up there? She's not in danger. She's dangerous. There's a difference. He raised his hands, started backing toward his vehicle. I'm out. Anyone with sense should be too. The exodus started slowly, then accelerated. People getting in trucks, engines starting, vehicles turning around on the narrow road. Marcus screamed at them, cursed them, but they kept leaving. Within 5 minutes, half his force was gone. Marcus stood alone with maybe 10 loyal followers, looking up at the ridge where Elena watched him with cold, steady eyes. This isn't over, he shouted. Elena's voice came back flat and final. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. I'll get the police, the sheriff. They'll make you come down. Then bring them. Let them try. But understand something, Marcus. Every time you come at me, I get stronger. Every time you fail, you look weaker. How many times you want to play this game before you figure out you already lost? His face contorted with rage and humiliation, the same emotions he'd used to destroy her at the altar. But this time they had nowhere to go. No audience to perform for, no power to wield, just a man, defeated, looking up at a woman he couldn't break. I loved you, he said, and for a moment he almost sounded human. No, you didn't. You loved owning me, and now you can't. That's all this has ever been about. Marcus stood there for another long moment, then turned and walked to his truck. His remaining supporters followed, and soon the clearing was empty except for the settling dust and the morning sun cutting through the trees. Elena lowered her rifle, let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Ronan climbed up to her position. You okay? Yeah. You? Better than them. He looked at the empty clearing. Think he'll come back? Maybe. Probably. But not like this. Not with people who can run away. Elena turned to look at the cabin, at the mountains rising behind it, at the life she'd built here. And every time he tries, I'll be ready. Margaret joined them, grinning fierce and proud. Did you see his face? When that shot hit near him, thought he was going to cry. He almost did, Elena said. Good. Man needs to learn some humility. They stood together on the ridge, 3 people who'd found their strength in refusing to bend, watching the last of the trucks disappear down the mountain. What now? Margaret asked. Elena thought about it. Down in town, people would be talking. The interview, the standoff, all of it feeding into a story she was writing with her life instead of her words. Some would think she was crazy. Others might understand. Most would just be relieved she wasn't their problem anymore. And up here, on this mountain that had nearly killed her and then remade her, she had everything she actually needed. Now we live, she said simply. We hunt, we build, we defend what's ours. And we stop caring what anyone else thinks about it. Ronan nodded approval. Margaret clapped her on the shoulder. And Elena Cross, who'd once been so afraid of what people thought that she'd almost let it kill her, smiled. The sheriff came 2 days later, alone, driving a department SUV that looked too clean for the mountain roads. Elena watched him park at the base of the trail, saw him hesitate before starting the climb up. Smart man. Cautious. She was sitting on the porch when he reached the cabin, rifle leaning against the wall beside her, but not in her hands. A statement, armed, but not threatening, yet. Sheriff Tom Bradshaw was 60-something, gray-haired, with the kind of weathered face that came from 30 years of dealing with people's worst behavior. He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, hands visible, gun holstered. "Ms. Cross." "Sheriff." "Mind if I come up? Have a conversation?" "That depends. You here officially or unofficially?" "Bit of both, if I'm being honest." He gestured to the steps. "Please? My knees aren't what they used to be, and standing at attention makes me feel old." Elena considered, then nodded. "Come up. But keep your hands where I can see them." Bradshaw climbed the steps slowly, settled into the chair opposite her with a grunt. "Getting too old for this job." "Then retire." "And do what? Fish? I'd be bored in a week." He looked around at the cabin, the cleared land, the obvious signs of hard work. "You've done well up here. Place looks solid." "It is. I heard about the standoff. Marcus Webb and about 30 others showing up here armed. They left. Nobody got hurt. This time." Bradshaw leaned back, his eyes sharp despite his casual posture. "Elena, I'm going to level with you. I've known Marcus since he was a kid. He's spoiled, entitled, used to getting what he wants, but he's also connected. His father owns half the commercial real estate in town. His uncle's on the county board. They're making noise, putting pressure on me to do something about you." "About me? I'm not the one who brought 30 armed men to someone's home." "No, you're not. And between you and me, Marcus is an asshole who got what he deserved." Bradshaw held up a hand. "But that's off the record. On the record, I have to investigate complaints, and I've got several. That you're being held here against your will. That Ronan Hale is running some kind of cult. That you're mentally unstable and need help." Elena felt anger spike hot and fast. "And what do you think?" "I think you look like someone who's exactly where she wants to be. Calm, clear-eyed, capable." He paused. "I also think you scared the hell out of a lot of people, and scared people do stupid things." "So what happens now?" "Now I ask you some questions. You answer them honestly, and I write a report that says you're here voluntarily and of sound mind. Then I go back to town and tell the Webbs to back off before someone actually gets hurt. They won't listen." "Probably not. But I'll have done my job, and more importantly, I'll have documentation. So if Marcus does something else stupid, I can arrest him without political blowback." Bradshaw pulled out a small notebook. "So, are you here against your will?" "No." "Has anyone threatened you, coerced you, or manipulated you into staying?" "No. Ronan saved my life and taught me how to survive. That's it." "Do you have any intention of returning to town?" "Not to live, no." "Do you feel safe here?" Elena smiled without humor. "Safer than I ever felt down there." Bradshaw wrote that down, nodding. "Figured as much. One last question, and this is the important one. If Marcus or anyone else comes back here with weapons, what are you going to do?" "Defend myself and my property, whatever that takes." "Even if it means shooting someone?" "Even then." Bradshaw looked at her for a long moment. "You mean that?" "Every word." He closed his notebook, slipped it back in his pocket. "Then I'm going to give you some advice, off the record. Document everything. Every visit, every threat, every incident. Take pictures if you can, because if this does escalate to violence, you want a clear record that you are defending yourself, not starting trouble." "You think it will escalate?" "I think men like Marcus don't know when to quit. And I think you've humiliated him twice now. Once by surviving when you should have died, and once by rejecting him in front of his own people. That kind of thing festers." Bradshaw stood, stretched his back. "I'll do what I can to keep the peace. But Elena, you need to understand something. I'm one man, and I can only be in one place at a time. If he comes at you when I'm not around, I'll handle it." I believe you will. That's what worries me." He walked to the steps, paused. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about what happened at that wedding. I wasn't there, but I heard about it. What he did to you was cruel and unnecessary." It was also the best thing that ever happened to me. Bradshaw nodded slowly. Funny how that works sometimes. The worst moments showing us who we really are. He started down the steps. Take care of yourself, Miss Cross. And try not to shoot anyone unless you absolutely have to. The paperwork's a nightmare. Elena watched him walk back down the trail, disappear into the trees. When he was gone, Ronan emerged from inside the cabin. Think he meant what he said? Ronan asked. Yeah, but he's right about the rest too. Marcus won't stop. Then we make sure we're ready when he doesn't. The weeks that followed were tense, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But nothing happened. No more vehicles, no more confrontations. Just the ordinary work of living, hunting, maintaining the cabin, preparing for the next winter. Elena started to wonder if maybe it was over, if Marcus had finally gotten the message. She should have known better. Her father came back in late May, looking older than he had before, more worn down. This time Elena met him at the trailhead, not wanting him near the cabin. Dad? Elena. Richard looked at her, really looked, taking in the changes. You look different. I am different. Your mother wanted to come. I told her no. Didn't think she could handle it. Probably right. They stood there awkwardly, the mountain wind moving through the trees around them. Finally, Richard spoke. I came to ask you something, not to convince you to come back. I know that's not happening, just to understand. What did we do wrong? Your mother and me? Where did we fail you so badly that you'd rather live like this than come home? Elena felt something soften in her chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. You didn't fail me, Dad. You loved me the best way you knew how. But you taught me to be small, to fit in, to measure my worth by what other people thought of me. And I was dying that way, slowly, quietly, but dying. And now? Now I'm alive. Really alive for the first time. Richard's eyes were wet. I don't know how to accept that. You don't have to accept it. You just have to accept that it's my choice. Marcus is planning something, he said abruptly. I don't know what, but I hear things. His father's been making calls, hiring people. They're not giving up. Elena felt her jaw tighten. Let them come. Elena, please. I know you've learned to survive up here, but these are dangerous men. Professional. Not like those idiots Marcus brought last time. I'm dangerous too now, Dad. That's what nobody seems to understand. You're my daughter. I'm a woman who knows how to kill to protect what's mine. Whether that's hunting deer or defending my home, it's the same skill set. She met his eyes. I'm not asking you to be proud of that. I'm just telling you how it is. Richard sagged, looking defeated. I can't protect you anymore. I don't need you to. I never really did. I just needed you to see me, to stand up for me when it mattered. And you didn't. Elena's voice was gentle but firm. I've made peace with that. Maybe you should too. How? By accepting that I'm happier now than I ever was in the life you wanted for me. That counts for something, doesn't it? Richard wiped his eyes. It counts for everything. That's what kills me. They talked for a while longer, finding a strange new footing. Not the relationship they'd had before, but something more honest. When Richard finally left, Elena felt lighter. One more tie to her old life. Not severed, but transformed into something she could carry. June brought heat and tourists, people hiking the lower trails, camping in designated areas. Elena saw them from a distance sometimes, heard their laughter echoing through the valleys. They seemed foreign now, creatures from a world she barely remembered. She felt no desire to join them, to explain herself, to bridge that gap. Margaret came by more often, bringing supplies from town, sharing news. The radio interview had made Elena something of a local legend. Some people thought she was crazy, others admired her independence. Still others were waiting to see her fail so they could say they knew it all along. There's a betting pool at Jerry's bar, Margaret said one evening, sharing whiskey by the fire. On how long you last up here. What's the spread? 6 months to 10 years, though there's one drunk who bet you'd be down by winter. Hope he didn't put much money on it. $50, which for Jerry Dalton is basically his life savings. Margaret sipped her drink. You know what I think? What? I think you've already won. Not because you'll stay up here forever necessarily, but because you proved you could. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into strength. That's victory, no matter what happens next. Elena considered that. It doesn't feel like victory. It just feels like living. That's because you're doing it right. Victory shouldn't feel like an accomplishment. It should feel like breathing. Ronan, whittling by the fire, spoke up. She's right. You've stopped proving anything. Now you're just being. Being what? Yourself, without apology or explanation. He tested the edge of the wood, nodded satisfaction. Most people never get there. They spend their whole lives performing for an audience that doesn't even care. The three of them sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn down to coals. These were Elena's people now. Not family by blood, but by choice. By shared understanding of what it meant to walk away from everything and build something real. The attack, when it finally came, was nothing like the last one. No trucks, no shouting, no warning. Just three men in the middle of the night, moving quiet and professional through the trees. Ex-military, maybe, or private security. The kind who did this for money, not emotion. Elena woke to Ronan's hand on her shoulder, his finger to his lips. She was up instantly, grabbing her rifle, moving to her position by muscle memory. Margaret was already on the south ridge, having spotted them first. The men moved in tactical formation, covering each other using hand signals. They weren't trying to talk or negotiate. This was a snatch operation. Get in, grab Elena, get out. But they'd underestimated the defensive preparations. The first man hit a pressure plate that set off a cascade of bells and lights. The second triggered a tripwire that released a net, tangling him up and leaving him hanging 3 feet off the ground, cursing and struggling. The third man, the leader, froze when Ronan's voice cut through the darkness. You've got about 5 seconds to identify yourself before we assume hostile intent. The man's hands came up slowly, professionally empty. We're private security, hired to retrieve Elena Cross and bring her back to her family for psychological evaluation. She's not going anywhere, Elena called from her position, and neither are you until the sheriff gets here. We have legal authority. You have a piece of paper saying you can escort someone who's willing. I'm not willing. That makes this kidnapping. Elena's voice was steady, calm. Margaret, call Sheriff Bradshaw. Tell him we have trespassers who need to be arrested. On it? Margaret's voice floated back. The man in the net was still struggling. The leader looked around, assessing the situation, calculating odds. Whatever he saw made him reconsider. This is a mistake, he said. We were told you were being held against your will. You were lied to. Question is whether you're going to compound that mistake by trying something stupid. The man seemed to come to a decision. My partner in the net, can we cut him down? No. He stays there until the sheriff arrives. You and your friend can sit on the ground, hands visible, and wait with him. This is ridiculous. A shot cracked close enough to the man's head that he flinched. Margaret's voice came again, amused. She said, sit down. Next one won't miss. The men sat. Sheriff Bradshaw arrived an hour later, clearly annoyed at being woken in the middle of the night. He took one look at the scene, 3 armed men on Elena's property, one hanging in a net like a treed raccoon, and sighed. Let me guess. Marcus Webb hired you. The leader, whose name turned out to be Jackson, nodded reluctantly. We were told this was a wellness check, legal guardianship papers signed by her parents. We were just supposed to escort her to a psychiatric facility for evaluation. And you believed that? Bradshaw was unimpressed. 3 men? Middle of the night? Armed? That's not an escort. That's a kidnapping. We had documentation, forged documentation, I'm betting. Let me see it. Jackson produced a folder. Bradshaw flipped through it, his expression darkening. Yeah, these are fake. Your client lied to you. Congratulations. You're now accessories to attempted kidnapping. Elena watched Jackson's face go pale. We didn't know. Doesn't matter. You should have verified. You should have contacted local law enforcement. Instead, you came onto private property in the middle of the night with weapons. Bradshaw looked at Elena. You want to press charges? Elena considered. These men weren't the real problem. They were just tools, hired muscle doing what they were paid to do. The problem was Marcus, who was escalating, getting more desperate. No charges, she said, but I want it on record, every detail. Who hired them, what they were told, what they tried to do. Done. Bradshaw turned to Jackson. You three are lucky. Ms. Cross here is being generous. If it were me, I'd have you in a cell already. As it is, you're leaving. Now. And you're going to tell Marcus Webb that if he tries this again, I'll arrest him myself. We clear? Yes, sir. They cut the man down from the net. He'd pissed himself at some point, which almost made Elena feel sorry for him, and watched the three men stumble back down the mountain. Bradshaw stayed behind, filling out paperwork by flashlight. This is the third incident I've documented, he said. Fourth if you count the wedding. I can arrest Marcus now, probably get a restraining order approved. Will that stop him? Legally? Yes. Practically? Bradshaw shrugged. Men who hire kidnappers aren't real concerned with restraining orders. So what do I do? Same thing you've been doing. Defend yourself. Document everything. And understand that eventually, this might end with someone getting seriously hurt. He looked at her directly. Can you handle that? Knowing you might have to shoot someone. Not in theory, but in practice? Elena thought about the deer she'd killed. The clean shot, the quick death. Then she thought about Marcus's face when she'd pointed her rifle at him, the rage and entitlement there. If it's him or me? Yeah, I can handle it. What about after? The guilt, the legal process, the scrutiny? I'll deal with it when it comes, but I'm not going to let fear of consequences stop me from defending my life. Bradshaw nodded slowly. All right then. Just remember, the law's on your side as long as you're defending yourself on your property. The moment you step off this mountain to confront him, that changes. I'm not going anywhere. Good, because he's counting on you making a mistake, getting angry, getting reckless, giving him something he can use against you. Bradshaw finished his paperwork, handed her a copy. Stay smart, stay safe, and for the love of everything, keep your finger off that trigger unless you mean it. After he left, Elena, Ronan, and Margaret sat on the porch watching the sun come up. He's getting desperate, Margaret observed. That's when people are most dangerous. Or most vulnerable, Ronan countered. Desperate men make mistakes. Either way, this is coming to a head. Elena felt the weight of it, the inevitability. He won't stop until he wins or loses completely. No middle ground. Then we make sure he loses, Margaret said simply. How? By being better prepared than he is. Smarter. More committed. He's fighting to reclaim something he thinks he owns. We're fighting to protect something we built. That's the difference. Ronan stood, stretched. She's right. His motivation is ego. Ours is survival. That gives us the advantage. Unless he brings enough force, that advantage doesn't matter. Then we make sure force isn't enough. Ronan looked at the mountain, at the terrain they knew so intimately. This is our ground, our home. He's the invader, and invaders always lose eventually, as long as the defenders refuse to surrender. Elena felt something settle into place, a kind of grim determination, cold and clear. She'd spent so long running from confrontation, avoiding conflict, trying to make peace. But some things couldn't be negotiated. Some people only understood strength. No more warnings, she said. Next time he comes, we end it. Margaret and Ronan exchanged glances, then nodded. They spent the next week fortifying, preparing. More alarms, more defensive positions, cached supplies in multiple locations. They war-gamed scenarios, practiced responses, made sure everyone knew their role. Margaret brought news from town. Marcus had been arrested, briefly, for the kidnapping attempt. His father's lawyers got him released within hours, but the charges were public record now, another mark against him. He was losing face, losing credibility, which made him more dangerous, not less. There's talk he's leaving town, Margaret said, that his father's sending him away to their place in California to cool off. You believe that? Elena asked. Not for a second. I think he's planning something final, something big enough to end this one way or another. Let him plan. We'll be ready. But the days passed and nothing happened. July became August, the mountain summer in full bloom. Tourists everywhere, the trails crowded, the valley full of life. Elena started to wonder if maybe Marcus really had left, if maybe his family had finally reined him in. Then one morning, her father called on the satellite phone Ronan kept for emergencies. Elena, you need to listen to me carefully. Richard's voice was tight with fear. Marcus is planning something for this weekend. I don't know what exactly, but I overheard his father talking. They're bringing in people from out of state. 20, maybe 30. They're going to come at you hard. End this. When? Saturday night, I think. After dark. They're planning to make it look like you fired first, like it was self-defense. Elena felt ice in her veins. Dad, how do you know this? I was at the club, and I heard them talking. They didn't know I was there. Elena, they're planning to kill you. Make it look justified, but the goal is to end you. Does Mom know? No, and she can't. She'd fall apart. Just, please, come down from there. Stay with us, just for a few days until this blows over. It won't blow over, Dad. This is exactly what he wants, to scare me off my own land. Better scared than dead. Better dead than broken. Elena's voice was steady. Thanks for the warning, but I'm staying. Elena, I mean it. This is my home. I'm not abandoning it because some entitled asshole can't handle rejection. If he comes, I'll be ready. Richard was crying on the other end. I can't lose you. You won't, because I'm not losing. Not to him, not to anyone. She paused. I love you, Dad, but you need to trust me. I know what I'm doing. She hung up before he could argue further. Ronan had heard the whole conversation. Saturday night, 3 days. 3 days to prepare for war. Think your father's intel is good? Yeah, he wouldn't risk calling otherwise. Margaret arrived an hour later, summoned by radio. When they told her, she didn't look surprised. Finally, I was getting tired of waiting. They laid out their plan carefully, methodically. Not to fight a defensive battle this time, but to end this permanently. To make Marcus and whoever he brought so thoroughly defeated that they'd never consider trying again. The key is making them commit, Ronan said, sketching in the dirt. Get them deep into our territory, where they can't retreat easily. Then hit them from multiple angles, Margaret added. Make it seem like there's more of us than there are. And document everything, Elena finished. Body cameras, audio recordings. So when it's over, the world knows exactly who started this and who finished it. They worked through Thursday and Friday, barely sleeping, setting traps, positioning cameras, running drills. By Saturday afternoon, the mountain was ready. A killing ground, if it came to that. A place where invaders would learn the cost of underestimating the people who lived there. Elena stood on the ridge as the sun set, watching the valley below. Somewhere down there, Marcus was gathering his forces, convincing himself he was righteous. That might made right. He was wrong, and tonight, she'd prove it. Ronan joined her, his presence solid and reassuring. You scared? Terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. It's when you stop being afraid that you make mistakes. Will we win? We're defending our home against people who think they can take it by force. So yeah, we'll win, one way or another. Margaret radioed in. I've got movement on the South Road, multiple vehicles, lights off. Here we go. Elena picked up her rifle, checked it one last time. Everything she'd learned, everything she'd become, had led to this moment. The mountain had tested her with cold and hunger and pain. Now it would test her with violence. She was ready. Let's end this, she said, and the three of them moved into position, waiting for the war that was coming to their door. The vehicles stopped a quarter-mile down the road, engines cutting out one by one. Elena counted 8, trucks and SUVs. Expensive ones. Through her night vision scope, she watched figures pour out, maybe 25 people total. They moved with more discipline than last time, spreading out in formation, checking weapons. Marcus was in the center, directing them with hand signals. Even from this distance, Elena could see the tension in his body, the rigid way he held himself. This was his final play. Win or lose everything. They're splitting into 3 groups, Margaret's voice crackled over the radio. 10 coming up the main trail, 8 flanking east, 7 going west. Let them, Ronan responded from his position. We want them separated. Elena watched the main group start up the trail, Marcus leading them. They moved cautiously, weapons ready, expecting resistance. What they didn't expect was patience. The first group made it halfway to the cabin before hitting the initial tripwire. Floodlights blazed to life, blinding them, and Ronan's voice boomed out from speakers they'd positioned in the trees. You're trespassing on private property. You have 30 seconds to turn around and leave. Marcus shielded his eyes from the lights, searching for the source of the voice. We're not leaving. Elena, this is your last chance. Come down peacefully, or we're coming up to get you. Try it, Elena's voice came from a different speaker, making it impossible to pinpoint her location. See what happens. Marcus signaled his people forward. They advanced another 50 yards before the second trap triggered. Not dangerous, just loud. Air horns rigged to motion sensors, the sound deafening in the mountain quiet. Birds exploded from the trees, the noise echoing off the ridges. The group froze, disoriented. That's when the first smoke grenades went off, theatrical smoke bombs Margaret had bought from a fireworks supplier. Suddenly, the trail was filled with colored smoke, visibility dropping to nothing. "Fall back!" someone shouted. "It's a trap!" But falling back meant running blind through smoke, and the terrain was deliberately channeling them toward the east, where Margaret waited. Elena watched through her scope as they stumbled and cursed, trying to regroup. The eastern flank was having their own problems. They'd hit the net traps, and 3 men were tangled up and dangling, shouting for help. The others were trying to cut them down, making themselves stationary targets. Margaret's voice came over the radio, tight with controlled amusement. "Eastern group is neutralized. They're not going anywhere without help." "Western group?" Elena asked. "Still advancing. They're the smart ones. Avoided most of the traps." "I've got them," Ronan said. "Let them come." Elena watched the Western group moving through the trees below her position, 7 men spread out in tactical formation. They were professionals, that much was clear. They'd learned from the mistakes of the others, moving slow, testing the ground, covering each other. But they didn't know the terrain like Ronan did. He'd positioned himself on a narrow section of trail with steep drops on both sides. The only way forward was single file, exposed. When the first man stepped into that corridor, Ronan triggered the pneumatic launcher they'd rigged, shooting rubber balls the size of baseballs at high velocity. The sound was like gunfire, the impact brutal. Men dove for cover, shouting, thinking they were being shot at. In the chaos, Ronan activated the second phase, a controlled rock slide, small stones and gravel pouring down the slope, not enough to hurt anyone, but enough to force them back. "Western group retreating," Ronan reported. 2 possible injuries, rest scrambling. Elena kept her scope on the main group, on Marcus. He was screaming into a radio, trying to coordinate his scattered forces. Nothing was going according to plan. He'd expected to overwhelm them with numbers, with force. Instead, he was being picked apart by terrain and tactics. "Elena!" he screamed into the darkness. "Stop hiding and face me. This is between us." She considered responding, decided against it. Let him yell. Let him waste energy. The longer this went on without actual violence, the better her legal position. But Marcus was done with patience. He pulled out a handgun and fired 3 shots into the air. "I'm not playing games anymore. Get down here or I start shooting into the cabin. You think I won't? You think I care about consequences at this point?" Elena's finger moved to her trigger, then stopped. He wanted her to shoot first, to give him justification. She wouldn't give him that. Instead, she triggered the final surprise. Recordings they'd made earlier, playing through the speakers. Sounds of multiple people moving through the brush, voices calling to each other, making it seem like there were a dozen defenders instead of 3. Marcus's group panicked. Someone fired at shadows. Others dove behind trees, convinced they were surrounded. "Hold fire!" Marcus screamed. "Hold your damn fire!" But discipline was breaking. These weren't soldiers. They were weekend warriors and hired muscle, and they were losing their nerve. The Eastern group had abandoned their trapped colleagues and were retreating. The Western group was already gone. That left Marcus with maybe 10 people, and half of them looked ready to run. That's when Sheriff Bradshaw's voice cut through the chaos, amplified by a megaphone. "This is Sheriff Bradshaw. You are all under arrest for trespassing, assault, and attempted home invasion. Drop your weapons and get on the ground. Now!" Lights flooded the trail from below. Police cruisers, at least 4 of them, blocking any retreat. Bradshaw had brought backup, state police by the look of their uniforms. Marcus spun around, wild-eyed. "No, you don't understand. She's the criminal. She's been threatening us." "Mr. Webb, I have about 3 hours of body camera footage from Ms. Cross and her associates showing exactly who threatened who. Not to mention the 9 complaints you've had filed against you in the last 2 months." Bradshaw's voice was iron. "Drop your weapon." For a moment, Elena thought Marcus might actually try to fight. His hand tightened on the gun, his face twisted with rage and desperation. Then one of his people, the smart one who'd warned him before, grabbed his arm. "It's over, Marcus. Let it go." Marcus looked up toward where he thought Elena was hiding. "This isn't over. You hear me? This isn't Yes, it is, Elena said, stepping into view on the ridge above him, rifle lowered but present. It was over the moment you couldn't control me anymore. You just didn't know it. In the police lights, she could see his face clearly. The rage, the humiliation, the absolute inability to comprehend that he'd lost. He'd brought an army to break her, and all he'd accomplished was breaking himself. "Get on the ground, Marcus," Bradshaw repeated. "Last warning." This time, Marcus complied. His people followed, weapons dropped, hands visible. Within minutes, they were all cuffed and being led down the mountain. Bradshaw climbed up to where Elena stood, Margaret and Ronan joining them. He looked exhausted. "Your father called me," he said. "Told me what he'd overheard. I've been parked down the road for 3 hours, letting you handle it your way. Figured you'd earned that much." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. There's going to be an investigation, questions, lawyers. Marcus's family will try to spin this, claim you provoked him." "We have everything recorded," Margaret said, holding up her body camera. "Every threat, every shot fired, every illegal action, all time-stamped and documented." Bradshaw nodded. "Good. You're going to need it." He looked at Elena directly. "You know you can't stay up here now, right? Not for a while. This place is a crime scene. We'll need to process everything." Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. "For how long?" "Week, maybe 2. I'll expedite it as much as I can, but the state boys will want to be thorough." "Where am I supposed to go?" "You've got family in town, or there's hotels." "No." The word came out flat, final. "I'm not going back there, not after everything." Ronan spoke up. "She can stay at my winter cabin, 20 miles north, off the grid. Nobody knows about it except Margaret and me." Bradshaw considered, then nodded. "All right, but you stay available. Don't make me come looking for you." "I'll be around." They spent the next hour giving statements, walking investigators through the defensive preparations, explaining every trap and recording device. Elena watched them catalog everything she'd built, turning her home into evidence. It felt like violation, even though she understood the necessity. Finally, as the sun started to rise, they were released. Elena grabbed a pack with essentials, took one last look at the cabin, and followed Ronan down a trail she'd never taken before. Margaret walked with them for the first mile, then split off toward her own place. "You did good tonight," she said to Elena. "Really good. You didn't lose your head, didn't escalate, just defended what was yours. That takes discipline." "It takes anger," Elena said. "Cold anger." "Even better. Hot anger makes you stupid. Cold anger keeps you alive." Margaret squeezed her shoulder. "I'll keep an eye on your place while you're gone. Make sure nobody bothers it." "Thank you." "That's what family does." Ronan's winter cabin was smaller than the main one, more primitive but solid. One room, a wood stove, a sleeping loft, isolated enough that nobody would stumble across it accidentally. Elena dropped her pack and sat on the narrow bed, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her shaky and hollow. "You okay?" Ronan asked, stoking the stove. "I don't know. Are we done? Is it actually over?" "The immediate threat is over. Marcus is going to jail, probably for a while. His people scattered. The law knows exactly what happened and who was at fault." He sat down across from her. "But over? That's up to you." "What do you mean?" "You proved you could defend your home, but that's not the same as living in peace. Every time someone gets curious, every time some reporter wants to interview the woman who fought off 30 men, you're going to have to decide how to respond." Elena hadn't thought about that. The aftermath, the attention, the way this story would follow her. "I just wanted to be left alone," she said quietly. "I know, but that's not how the world works. You became something people can't ignore. A symbol, whether you want to be or not." Ronan poured water for tea. "Question is, what kind of symbol? The crazy woman who hid in the mountains? Or the strong one who built a new life on her own terms?" "Does it matter what other people think?" "Not really, but it matters what you think of yourself, what you're willing to own." Elena accepted the tea, warming her hands on the cup. Through the window, she could see mountains stretching endlessly, wild and beautiful and unforgiving. She'd come here to die. Instead, she'd learned to live, really live, not just exist. "I want to go back," she said, "to the cabin. As soon as they'll let me, And I want to stay there, not hiding, not making some political statement, just living the life I chose. And if people won't let you, if the attention doesn't stop, then I'll deal with it the same way I dealt with Marcus. On my terms, not theirs. Ronan smiled. Good answer. They stayed at the winter cabin for 12 days. The investigation was thorough. State police, federal agents checking for weapons violations, even an ATF review of the defensive preparations. But in the end, the evidence was overwhelming. Marcus and his people had come armed, with intent to kidnap or harm. Elena had defended herself and her property within legal bounds. No shots fired by the defenders, no excessive force, just smart tactics and superior knowledge of terrain. Marcus was charged with attempted kidnapping, assault, conspiracy, and about a dozen other felonies. His father's lawyers tried to negotiate, but the body camera footage made their job impossible. 25 people witnessed his threats, his violence, his absolute refusal to back down even when given multiple chances. He took a plea deal. 7 years, eligible for parole in 5. The other participants got lesser sentences or community service, depending on their level of involvement. When Elena finally got the call that she could return home, she felt something release in her chest. She'd started to worry in the quiet hours that they wouldn't let her go back, that the state would find some reason to condemn the property, to push her out. But they hadn't. The cabin was still hers. Ronan drove her back on a bright August morning. Margaret was waiting on the porch, having cleaned up the investigation debris and restocked the supplies. Welcome home, Margaret said, pulling Elena into a hug. Thank you for everything. Stop, you do the same for me. The cabin looked exactly as Elena remembered, minus the investigation markers and police tape. Her books still on the shelf, her clothes in the trunk, the fire pit waiting to be lit. Home. That afternoon, her father visited. He came alone, driving slowly, like he expected something to jump out at him. Elena met him on the porch. He looked older than when she'd seen him last, the stress of the past weeks written in new lines on his face. I talked to the prosecutors, he said without preamble. Made sure they knew I'd overheard Marcus planning this, that it was premeditated. You testified against him? I did what I should have done at that wedding. I stood up for my daughter. His voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry it took me so long to figure out how. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. Your mother wants to see you. She's been asking every day, but she's afraid you won't want to see her. I'll come down. Next week maybe, for dinner. Richard's face brightened with hope. Really? Really. But Dad, you need to understand, I'm coming to visit, not to stay. This is my home now. I know, I'm starting to accept that. He looked around at the mountains, the cabin, the life she'd built. You're happy here. I am. Then that's enough. That has to be enough. He hugged her, awkward and tight. I'm proud of you. I should have said that before. Should have said it at the wedding when Marcus was destroying you. But I'm saying it now. I'm proud of who you've become. Elena held him, this imperfect man who'd raised her with good intentions and limited understanding. She'd spent so long being angry at him, at her mother, at everyone who'd failed her. But anger was heavy. She was tired of carrying it. I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. After he left, Elena sat on the porch and watched the sun move across the sky. Ronan was chopping wood, the rhythmic thunk of the axe comforting and familiar. Margaret had gone back to her place but would return for dinner. This was her life now. Simple, hard, honest. The town didn't forget about her, but they learned to leave her alone. Some people drove up occasionally, wanting to meet the woman from the news stories. Elena was polite but firm. She'd give them 5 minutes, answer basic questions, then send them on their way. Most got the message. A few tried to turn her into something she wasn't, a feminist icon, a survivalist hero, a cautionary tale. Elena ignored all of it. She wasn't a symbol. She was just a woman who'd chosen her own path and defended it when challenged. Fall came, painting the mountains in gold and red. Elena prepared for her second winter, this time knowing exactly what to expect. She'd learned so much, not just survival skills, but about herself, about strength that came not from never breaking, but from choosing what to do with the broken pieces. One evening in late September, sitting by the fire with Ronan and Margaret, someone asked about forgiveness. "Do you forgive him?" Margaret wanted to know. "Marcus, for what he did." Elena thought about it, really thought. "No, I don't forgive him. What he did was cruel and deliberate, and he never showed real remorse. But I don't need to forgive him. His actions freed me, even if that wasn't his intent. So in a weird way, I'm grateful." "That's not the same as forgiveness," Ronan observed. "No, it's better. Forgiveness implies he deserves it. Gratitude is about taking what happened and making it useful. He tried to destroy me. Instead, he revealed who I really was. That's worth something." "And if he gets out early?" Margaret asked. "If he comes looking for you again?" Elena smiled, cold and certain. "Then I'll handle it. Same as before. But I don't think he will. I think he finally understands that I'm not who he thought I was. That I never was." Winter came again, as brutal as the first but less terrifying. Elena knew how to survive now, how to read the weather, when to push and when to conserve energy. She was stronger, faster, more confident. The mountain tested her, but she met every test. Spring brought changes. Margaret decided to sell her place in town, move up to the mountain full-time. She built a small cabin 3 miles from Elena's, close enough for community but far enough for privacy. Other people started asking about property up there. People who'd heard the stories and wanted something different from normal life. Elena watched it happen with mixed feelings. Part of her wanted to keep the mountain isolated, pristine, but another part understood that she didn't own the wilderness. She'd just claimed her piece of it. If others wanted to do the same, as long as they respected the land and each other, who was she to object? By her 3rd year on the mountain, Elena had built something sustainable. She sold handmade items, leather goods, preserved foods, carved wood, to tourists and town shops. Not because she needed the money, though it helped, but because she enjoyed the work, the creativity, the tangible proof of her skill. Ronan taught her advanced tracking, how to read animal behavior, how to predict weather patterns weeks in advance. Margaret shared her knowledge of plants and medicine, the kind of practical healing that didn't require hospitals or pharmacies. Elena absorbed it all, adding to her own understanding until she could survive completely independently if she needed to. But she didn't need to. That was the gift of those years, learning that independence didn't mean isolation, that she could be strong and still accept help, that community built on mutual respect was different from the forced connections of her old life. She went down to town occasionally, visiting her parents for holidays, maintaining cordial relationships with a few old acquaintances. But she always left before staying too long, always felt relief when she reached the mountain road and started the climb home. People asked, sometimes, if she regretted it, the life she'd left behind, the normal path she could have taken. The question always confused her. How could she regret choosing truth over performance? Strength over compliance? Freedom over safety? On the 5th anniversary of the wedding that wasn't, Elena woke in her cabin to fresh snow and clear skies. She made coffee, stoked the fire, stepped onto the porch to greet the day. The valley below was waking up, smoke rising from chimneys, cars moving on distant roads. That world still existed. She'd just chosen not to live in it. Ronan was already up, checking the trap line. Margaret would arrive by noon with news and supplies. They'd share a meal, maybe work on the new storage shed they were building. Simple plans, honest work. Elena thought about the woman she'd been 5 years ago, terrified, humiliated, so desperate to escape that she'd run into a killing storm. That woman had died in the snow, and what emerged was someone new, someone harder, yes, but also more real. More herself than she'd ever been in 28 years of trying to fit into spaces too small for her. Marcus was still in prison. She'd heard through her father. Up for parole in 2 years. She wondered sometimes if he thought about her, if he understood yet what he'd done. Not the humiliation at the wedding, that was just the catalyst, but the gift he'd accidentally given her, the chance to burn everything down and rebuild from scratch. She hoped, in a distant way, that he found peace eventually, that prison taught him something about consequences and humility. But his journey wasn't her concern anymore. He was just part of her origin story, the villain who created the hero by trying to destroy her. A deer moved through the clearing below the cabin, pausing to browse on new growth. Elena watched it, remembering the first deer she'd killed, the weight of that decision. She'd killed many since, deer, elk, Even a bear once when it threatened the cabin. Each death was necessary, respected, mourned in its way. That was the mountain's teaching. Life fed on life, and the only dishonor was in taking without gratitude or killing without need. The snow started falling again, light flakes that caught the morning sun. Elena finished her coffee, went inside to dress for the day. There was wood to split, water to haul, a dozen small tasks that made up the rhythm of mountain life. She'd do them all with the same focused attention she brought to everything now. No wasted motion, no wasted thought, just the work, done well, because it mattered. That evening, sitting by the fire with Ronan and Margaret, someone mentioned the news. A feature article in some magazine about women who'd radically changed their lives. Elena was in it, though she'd refused to be interviewed. They'd used old photos, quoted the radio interview from years ago, speculated about what her life was like now. "They make you sound like a hermit," Margaret said, reading from her phone. "Like you're hiding from society." "Let them think that. Better than the truth making me some kind of inspiration. People always want stories to be simpler than they are." "What's the truth then?" Ronan asked, though he probably knew. Elena considered how to answer. "The truth is I was dying, and I chose to live. Not metaphorically, literally. I was in that storm planning to let it kill me, and then I decided I'd rather fight. Everything since has just been following through on that decision." "And if you could go back?" Margaret asked, "knowing everything you know now, would you change anything?" Elena thought about the wedding, the humiliation, the pain, thought about her old apartment, her old job, the old version of herself who'd been so afraid of making waves that she'd nearly drowned in stillness. "No, I wouldn't change a thing, because all of it, the good and the terrible, led me here. And here is exactly where I need to be." The fire crackled, sending sparks toward the ceiling. Outside, the wind moved through the pines. That sound Elena had learned to love. The mountain speaking, reminding her she was just one small part of its vast indifference. But that was okay. She didn't need the mountain to care about her. She just needed it to be honest, which it always was. Harsh and beautiful and absolutely fair. Give respect. Take only what you need. Defend what's yours. Simple rules for a complex life. Years passed. Elena's parents grew older, softer, learning to accept their daughter's choices, even if they didn't fully understand them. Her mother visited sometimes, always calling first, always leaving before dark. They found a new relationship, one built on honesty instead of expectations. The mountain community grew slowly. A few more people built cabins, established lives outside the normal grid. They looked out for each other in that independent way mountain people did, available in crisis, absent otherwise. Elena liked that balance. She was 35 when she finally felt complete. Not finished. She'd never be finished. There was always more to learn, but whole. Like all the scattered pieces of who she was had finally settled into a pattern that made sense. Sometimes people from town asked what she did up there all day, like they couldn't imagine life without constant entertainment, without the noise of civilization. Elena never knew how to explain that doing less led to being more, that in the quiet, she'd found parts of herself that got lost in the chaos of normal life. She was a hunter, a builder, a survivor. She was someone who knew her own mind and defended her own choices. She was hard when she needed to be, and gentle when she chose to be. She was exactly who she'd always been underneath the performance, finally given permission to exist. The cabin stood solid and weather-tight, expanded over the years with additions and improvements. Her workshop produced items people wanted. Her skills commanded respect. Her life had meaning built from her own hands rather than borrowed from others' expectations. On quiet nights, Elena would stand on her porch and look down at the valley where her old life had been. Those lights seemed so distant now, so irrelevant. She didn't hate them. Didn't judge the people who needed that structure, that community, that particular version of safety. She just didn't need it anymore. The mountain had taught her a different way. Not easier, but truer. And truth, Elena had learned, was worth any cost. She thought sometimes about the woman in the wedding dress, running into that storm with nothing but pain and desperation. If she could speak to that woman now, what would she say? Probably nothing. Words wouldn't have helped then. That woman needed to break first, needed to hit bottom, Needed to face the absolute worst before she could start building better. But if she had to say something, it would be simple. You're stronger than you know. The worst thing that will ever happen to you is about to become the best thing. Hold on. Choose to live. The rest will follow. The snow fell, the seasons turned, the mountains stood eternal and indifferent. And Elena Cross, who'd been broken at an altar and remade in fire and ice, lived the life she'd chosen with no apologies and no regrets. That was victory, not the dramatic kind from movies. Just the quiet daily triumph of being exactly who she was, in exactly the place she belonged, answering to no one but herself and the mountain that had saved her by refusing to make things easy. And in the end, that was all anyone really needed. The courage to choose their own path, the strength to defend it, and the wisdom to know the difference between surviving and living. Elena had learned all three, and that made her free.